All right, let's get it. Drive time. Monday afternoon, 13 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. We continue our mild December. It's about 48 degrees and the sun is shining here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah on this beautiful Monday afternoon, depending on your definition of beauty, as a lot of people wait for the snow. But as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Hope you had a great weekend. Happy Monday to you. Off to a great start to that work week. Perhaps you are already off for the holidays. If you are lucky enough to be off for the holidays already, congratulations to you. A lot to do. Jam-packed Monday show. Of course, we'll continue to cover the breaking news that we covered last Friday as the show was beginning, as the University of Utah sent out the email that Coach Witt was stepping down, not retiring, but stepping down. So, of course, as the rumor mill does, it has been churning all weekend long. Not necessarily just focusing on the legacy that Coach Witt leaves behind at the University of Utah, but the potential of a second act, as it were, for Kyle coaching somewhere else. Have no information in that direction, but we will continue to talk about the 21-year legacy as the head coach, 32 years as a coach up on the Hill, that Coach Witt leaves in his wake as he steps aside to make way for Morgan Scalley, who is now officially your Utah football head coach. That was made official over the weekend. Of course, that's no surprise. For all of us who have been around now for quite some time, it has been the plan for a number of different years for Morgan to step in and take over for Kyle. So get into all the angles, talk about the potential of what's next, and busy Monday as a result of a really busy sports weekend. Your pro football weekend will come to a close tonight with some Monday Night Football, as the Steelers and the Dolphins will go at it at, I believe it's Acrisure Stadium now in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've got a lot of NFL storylines to get to. Pretty entertaining Sunday night game if you're a Vikings fan. The Cowboys continue to, unfortunately, find ways to stub their own toe defensively. A really, really rough weekend for injuries as Patrick Mahomes has torn his ACL, and as has Micah Parsons. So two big-time players going down over the weekend. So we'll get to some NFL storylines on the show as well. And, get you ready for a busy week. The Utah Jazz are in action tonight, welcoming in Cooper Flagg and the Dallas Mavericks. Mammoth will be back at it on the road tomorrow. A couple of good wins for the Mammoths to start their road trip against Seattle, and then a good comeback against Sid Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So we'll get to the latest on the Jazz side. On the Mammoth side, of course, we're high speed ahead to kind of football being left behind and looking ahead to some NBA storylines, college hoops as well. So a lot to do. Monday afternoon, good guest list today. We're going to start things off with our buddy Scott Mitchell, former Utah quarterback, now on the broadcast side of things. Scott was filling in for Sean last week. So we were able to catch up with Scott a couple of times during crosstalk, but we have not spoken with Scott since the news came down that Witt is stepping down. Going to bring in Stevenson Sylvester, of course, played for Kyle and is on our broadcast team, one of the best to ever do it at the U at the linebacker position. We'll continue with Zach Moss, also not just one of the best running backs in Utah history, simply one of the best players to ever wear the Utah football jersey. His thoughts on Coach Witt and Morgan Scalley taking over, and then Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes, will join us as well. So busy day. Scott Mitchell, Stevenson Sylvester, Zach Moss, Bill Riley, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the listeners, hello. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. And that guy, Porter Larson, happy Monday. Of course, the rumor mill is doing rumor mill things. I feel like most of the attention probably should be on simply what Kyle leaves behind as he steps down, but I think a lot of people are really curious. It's the number one question I received over the weekend. Not like, hey, how did this go down? What happened behind the scenes? Everybody wants to know if there is a second act for Witt.
And it's an intriguing question because, number one, it's a guy who, still seems to have a little bit of juice when it comes to the coaching game. And there's a few jobs out there that, could maybe be pretty enticing for a head football coach who has done more with less and now could get more, right? That would be pretty interesting. And I think that it's not a done deal that Kyle is necessarily done. And I think that, we saw that with how this unfolded, right? The stepping down without a mention of the advisory role, without a mention of actually retiring, I think is whether it's just to allow Kyle the opportunity to maybe feel things out, it very much seems like that was part of the plan.
Yeah, and we'll just have to kind of wait and see because nobody really knows the answer as far as what could be next for the legendary Utah football coach. Our first guest might be able to shed some light on that will be Scott Mitchell on this Monday afternoon. But before Scott stops by, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip. Holiday season, guys, best time of year for sports. We've got bowl games. We've got basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It is all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there's one place where it feels good to be right, and that's with our friends at Prize Picks. A couple of new feature alerts that they just came out with. Number one, they have early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Breaking news, I made the playoffs in my fantasy football leagues, and I lost in the first round in all of them. So my fantasy football season is over. But with Prize Picks, you can play fantasy football every week. You pick your favorite players, and when they hit their projections, you're going to win some cash, no draft required. Here's the deal. Go get their free money. That's step number one. If you download that Prize Picks app today, use the promo code ESPN700. You get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN, $700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right. Friday was a whirlwind. Took the entire weekend to kind of recover. Got a lot of rest. Hopefully you guys did too. We had an entire show booked out, planned out. And then right before we cracked the mic to go on air, we get the email release from the University of Utah that Coach Witt had decided to step down. Now, as a lot of people surmised, that did not say he was retiring. That was not a piece of the language in the release. It was not a piece of the language in the ensuing reactions from either the University of Utah. We have not heard a public comment. I'm not sure that we're going to for quite some time. When it comes to Coach Witt, I thought maybe we would get, the potential press release and, there is a chance that Kyle will speak Vegas Bowl style. That will be his final game as head coach will be the Vegas Bowl against Nebraska on New Year's Eve. So potentially we hear something from Coach Witt then. Not sure if we will prior to. And there have just been a lot of conversations going on offline about the potential of him doing something else, a potential second act for Coach Witt in his storied coaching career. No idea if that's what we're going to see. But, of course, that continues to be the main question. And as Sean and I discussed during Crosstalk, at least this is just my opinion, and, of course, everybody can have their own opinion, nothing that Coach Witt could do would, at least in my estimation, diminish what he's done here for 21 years as the head coach for Utah football and 32 years on this coaching staff. And, of course, as we're all expecting, the word comes down officially that Morgan Scalley is stepping in and he will take over as Utah football's next head coach. Conversation when it comes to, stuff like this, and there's no blueprint for the right hire. I've long said, because I believe this to be true, more so than any sport on any level. In college football, if you get it right, you'll know pretty quickly. And if you get it right, it can change the scope of not just your football program, but your athletic department. And quite frankly, with the way the deal is these days, and coming up at 3:30, we have an open segment. The new private equity deal that Utah struck with Ocho that we talked a lot about last week, in addition to the private equity deal that's on the table now for the Big 12 Conference, which, by the way, is not an equity deal. It's actually just a capital infusement for universities to potentially receive about $30 million apiece and then utilize those funds in whatever way they want. According to the reports, this is not a private equity group that will have equity in the Big 12, which is an interesting wrinkle. But I caught wind of a few things over the weekend, heard from some people that listened to the show last week that wanted to kind of shed some light and some, try to get some misnomers corrected out there. There's a chance, and we'll get to this later in detail, there's a chance that this $500 million infusement, which, by the way, as I understand it, is a combination of private equity investment and then also investment from local people that had the opportunity to buy into the project and actually have equity pieces of their own. There's a chance that this money is not only going to be allocated to the athletic department, but it's going to be spread out across the entire institution of the University of Utah. And there was a really fascinating Substack that I read over the weekend, and they did a deep dive analysis of the University of Texas. So they didn't do it on Utah, but the University of Texas is thought to be the most valuable university, period, in the entire United States. And it talked about how the really university ecosystem has changed a lot, where it's no longer about higher institution. It's no longer about professors making sure that they're challenging their students at the highest of levels. That takes place really with the system over at the UK. They surmise that university experience is now stateside, more about specializing in certain things. So, for instance, if you know you want to go to med school, why are you studying English? Like, who gives a rip? If you know that you want to be a football player, well, there'll be a future at the university where you can just focus on that, which sounds counterintuitive to all of us that actually had a collegiate experience or just the way colleges have worked in the United States. But really, the reason I'm bringing this up is they did a deep dive on just how valuable the University of Texas brand is. The University of Texas football program is thought to be the most valuable football program in college football. But the University of Texas, if you expand it out, is thought to be the most valuable university in the United States. They have apparently the ability to leverage about $2.3 million or 2.3 million acres of land that they own. It is like 9 campuses, 250,000 students, 4 hospitals. And the reason that I read this is they actually tied it in to private equity in college athletics. And, you know, the Oklahoma Supreme Court signed a piece of legislation 40 years ago that allowed conferences to strike their own TV deal. And what that allowed is extreme revenue per conference and therefore per member institution. And they surmised that it was only a matter of time until private equity came calling for colleges and universities, not just athletic departments, but with NIL becoming a reality and the ability to pay players now on the table, and then essentially free agency, which we call the transfer portal in college athletics. What private equity loves the most is lack of regulation in an area where there's extreme cash flow. And that's what college football is right now. Private equity essentially owns the United States government. Private equity, as I've learned getting my MBA in finance in the past week and a half, essentially owns everything. Veterinarians, all of them are like private, like under the umbrella of private equity. And, you know, you could just continue to go down the list where it feels like if there's an area of obvious cash flow combined with serious lack of regulations, this predatory financial model is going to find its way there. And a lot of people surprised it took this long for it to find its way into college football. But here we are. And Utah's in bed with their own private equity partner. The Big 12 is on the way. I think the Big 10 is still trying to push that through, but Michigan and USC are holding it up. But if this money is spread out across the entire institution instead of just the athletic department, I think that breeds an interesting conversation about what exactly this means. And don't forget, the mastermind behind this whole thing, it's not Mark Harlan. It's not, the local investors that could buy a piece of this thing. It's the president of the university. It's Taylor. It's Taylor Randall, who's a really sharp guy, and I'm sure has his eye on how this money can benefit the entire institution, not just the athletic department. Because remember, we're a sports talk radio show, right? And if you're in sports talk, you tend to overvalue what athletics means as opposed to expanding it back and understanding what it means in the entire ecosystem of a university like the University of Utah. And I couldn't put like a percentage on how much of Taylor's energy is allocated to sports, but what would you say, 10 to 15% maybe? And of course, with the ability to generate revenue on the football side of things, it's more important now than it ever has been. But Taylor has a lot of other things that he has to worry about as the president of the University of Utah, a business school, a law school, hospitals, and we could keep going. Just go down the list. And the chasm between academia and athletics is nothing new. So if you think about it through the prism of a English professor or somebody who teaches at the business school or somebody who's in charge of the hospital, and they read like, wait a second, $500 million is being funneled into our institution and it's going to football. Can we get some of that while we're over here trying to, save lives? Then you can understand where Taylor would be coming from if this private equity deal isn't just necessarily with athletics. Now, only time will tell about how it will be divvied out, but we'll get to this kind of more in detail in 3:30 because I had a lot of stuff kind of come my way over the weekend. We'll catch our first break, but coming up next, more on the legacy of Witt and the future of Utah football with Scott Mitchell. Then we'll move over to Stevenson Sylvester, Zach Moss, and Bill Riley. Busy Monday show. Good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. So PESP released an updated database of largest private equity-owned employers. And here's what you need to know. Chances are, whatever you do, there's private equity involved. The list is HVAC companies, wherever you're taking your animal for care, vets, pretty much anywhere in healthcare, obviously financial services, but consumer goods. And so I think if you're in the world of labor, you probably have had a bad experience at one point with private equity, and that's why it's known as predatory financing. 3:30, we'll dig into this with some of the information that kind of came my way over the weekend about this $500 million infusion, not just being utilized for athletics, but potentially utilized for the University of Utah as an institution overall, which makes sense if you kind of think about it from a macro viewpoint. But we'll talk more about that coming up in a bit. Let's bring in Scott Mitchell on a Monday afternoon. Hello, Scott. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, Spence. Just don't make me do math.
I will not make you do math.
I can't do these $500 million questions. I'm 5 plus 5 is 10. That's as high as I go.
Let's try this. What's $500 million minus $400 million?
$100 million.
See, Scott, you can do math on air. Give yourself a little credit, my friend.
Phone. Come on, that was an easy one.
Okay, fair enough. All right,
softball questions. Come on.
Okay, here, let's move over into the space, of course, that we need to discuss with you. And since you and I last spoke, the news became official that Kyle is stepping down. Now, it did not say retiring. He has not said retiring. Nobody has said the word retiring, Scott. But before we get there, let's just start with where Kyle deserves us to start, and that is your thoughts on the legacy he leaves behind after 21 years as the head coach for Utah football.
Well, I've said this a million times, and it's worth saying a million more. Kyle Whittingham has done more in college football coaching than I think anyone in the last 21 years, 25 years. He's done more with less. He's gone from a group of 5 to a power 5 to the Rose Bowl. He's gone undefeated. He's just truly taken Utah to a place it's never been before. He's been in charge of all that. He's been excellent at developing players. They did an excellent job of recruiting players. They did an excellent job. He's done an excellent job of creating an awesome culture. He's been a guy who's I just can't say enough how staying and committing to the school on a long-term basis probably helped him out, but it certainly helped the school out in all of, the success they've had. I mean, you look at Colorado, who's kind of had a parallel path with Utah, at least since joining the Pac-12, and they're a dumpster fire. They've never been anything less than that, and so much of it is they just haven't really found the right coach and committed to that coach, and it's just such a big deal. And he's been someone who's just been well respected across the country. He does things the right way. He's just a good human being who's a great football coach.
And obviously winning helps, right? And, that is the name of the game in a results-orientated business. I was doing some TV over the weekend, and I was asked for my favorite, singular memory of Kyle's tenure. And for me, Scott, I immediately go to 2008. Now, it was prior to the Pac-12. It was prior to P4. It was prior to the Big 12. But as a defensive coordinator on Urban staff in 2004, certainly Coach Witt was a key cog in that run. 2008, though, for me, was kind of his marker that, wait a second, no, I'm here. I can do this as the guy. And let's not diminish the fact that Sugar Bowl win was over Bama, right? It'd be one thing if it was over A&M, which would have been cool. But it was Alabama. It was Nick Saban, and it culminated in an undefeated run. So I always go to 2008 as my Witt moment. Is there one for you?
Well, that was a great moment, and it kind of exemplifies what I've been saying. Here's Alabama. They have everything, all the resources. Probably the greatest college football coach ever in Nick Saban. Maybe not at that time, but they're still Alabama. It's still it's a New Year's Bowl. Utah's I guess a group of 5 team at the time, and it just speaks volumes to how he can play in any stage and take the players he has and get the most out of them. I think that's what ultimately Nick Saban did, is he got the most out of the players that he recruited, and that's why he won so many championships. But yeah, that was a great moment. I'll tell you, There's nothing better than beating USC, and to beat USC twice. That was such an electrifying game when Utah won in the conference championship in Las Vegas. That was a great moment for me. It was a great moment going. I know it wasn't a win in the Rose Bowl, but boy, 70,000 Utah fans traveling to Pasadena and going to the Rose Bowl was a pretty special moment. Yeah, there are a lot of good ones. A lot of good ones that they just point to. You mentioned something about winning, and he didn't use excuses. He didn't say, "Hey, we're kind of at a loss here. We're at a disadvantage. We can't recruit like USC, Oregon, Washington." But they certainly competed and won. And yeah, I mean, there's a ton of Coach Witt moments that are really special. But I can't argue with yours. I just know personally, being up close to that and watching it and calling those games, that just made it super exciting for me.
I know that there are a lot of people that like to play revisionist historian, and certainly now that we can look back on 21 years, it became very apparent that he was the right guy for this football team as far as to steward it and lead it moving forward. But look, man, I can remember the first few years in the Pac-12 where, 4 and 5 year one, there was this weird thing where they actually had a chance to win it via tiebreaker. But then two straight 5 and 7 years, 3 and 6, 2 and 7, the voices of dissent were really, really loud. And I know a lot of people don't want to acknowledge it because it turned out that Dr. Hill's patience with Witt was the right move. But you remember what I'm talking about, right? Like early on, there were a lot of people that wondered if Kyle had this in him to coach a P4 football team.
Yeah, and to everyone's credit, Chris Hill, whoever made those decisions, to Kyle, really sticking with it and having confidence in those challenging moments. I think those are probably the moments you grow the most as a coach and you figure things out. And I think part of the patience was certainly moving up in conferences. So, all right, we got to give this a little bit of time. Now, how much time do you actually give it? I don't know, but they seem to do it the right way. And it's one of those things, but that also makes me nervous moving forward because I think you're still going to have some patience with a young new coach. And I think in general, there's not a lot of patience in sports. I don't know what a private equity does as far as patience. If it just throws it out the window, you're going to need patience. Morgan's a great coach, but he's never been a head coach, and you're in a new era of college football. It's very similar into moving into the Pac-12. Now it's like you're moving into the money era of college football. And can you compete? Are you going to get the resources? And if you don't, can you still find that magic? Can you still find those players to at least compete and be competitive? I don't know, but yeah, it's to have those losses and to have those moments are tough. But I think you grow. I think Kyle probably grew the most as a coach is when he had those losing years, and because you start to doubt yourself, you start to question things, but then when you pull out of it, you go, okay, it means more. You have more resolve, you have more grit when you have to work through and kind of struggle with things. So I appreciate that he went through that. I mean, you look at Kalani at BYU, kind of a similar type of thing. There's some similar parallels going on. So hopefully the people in charge can see the big picture and have some patience down the road.
So you reference, private equity permeating into the world of collegiate athletics, which has felt inevitable and honestly probably surprising that it did take this long. And look, the fact of the matter, Scott, is none of us know how any of this went down behind the scenes, unless you do have any information. A lot of people have asked me, do you think it was the private equity deal that finally motivated Kyle to walk away, the changing nature of college football that turned an old school coach off? I mean, there have been a number of coaches, namely Nick Saban and others, that have decided this era of college football is not for them. Do you think any of that had to do with Witt's decision, or do you just think it was going to be time no matter what the landscape of the sport looks like right now?
No, I think there's a definite correlation between the two. I'm sure there were a lot of discussions that went on and said, this is what it's going to look like moving forward. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to have money, or that doesn't mean anything. It just means, and maybe they all just said, look, what you're looking for and what we're looking for isn't necessarily copacetic, and so it's probably a really good time to kind of break off right here. We're going in a new direction with private equity. It's uncharted territory for us. It'd be a great spot for Morgan to step into the coaching position and kind of there's not really a lot of awkwardness to it. What if Kyle continues to coach and then it gets like ugly, like what if they have a bad year next year and, like a couple of years ago. And I think everyone wants Kyle to go out as being the greatest coach in Utah football history, and on a high note, on a positive note. And I think this year was, let's not chance it for the future, and let's all just be friends and move on in a different direction. And I'm sure, I don't know. I get a sense. I don't think Kyle was totally done coaching. I think he was very energized by this offense, some of these young players they have, and the defense. Figuring that out next year, and feeling like they got a pretty good shot to compete again. So I don't think he was done. I think their mutual kind of focus on where the football program is headed right now probably wasn't mutual, and so it's just a good time to part ways. Now, what he does, I'll just tell you, Spence, because he said step down, right? I get it. I don't think he wants to retire. And if I'm Kyle Whittingham, and I say go to Michigan, I really would. I don't even care if you're there for a couple of years. Who cares? It's like, it's icing on your career. You get to taste what it's like, to kind of be in the big seat in the big house and really get a behind the scenes look at, Big Ten football and one of the marquee programs in the country. Oh boy, I think that would be really hard to turn down, and I would believe it would be immensely enticing to do. And I would do it if I was him in a heartbeat. So who knows where he goes from here.
So I do want to end with Morgan, but let's kind of expand on what you just alluded to. And it is the number one question I received over the weekend, because Friday's show was a little wild. As we were playing the intro to the show, the email from Utah came in that Whit was stepping down. So we kind of threw out the rundown and allocated 3 hours and 47 minutes of a 4-hour space to Whit. Listeners will complain that 13 minutes of that were NBA, but, we did the best we could. And so since then, the number one question I've received from people is not, hey, how did this go down? Or was it a mutual parting of ways? Was Whit encouraged to step down? Like, it really is only like, what is next for him? And look, he's 66. That's not old. Saban was, I think, 72 when he stepped down from Alabama. He obviously has a tremendous amount of energy left. And his son himself gave an interview to the Trib acknowledging that he probably wants to do other things. Is there anything Kyle could do that would change the way people around here view his tenure at Utah? Like, there shouldn't be, but is there anything that you think would change the way people think about it?
Well, if he went somewhere else and went to the playoffs and went deep in the playoffs, maybe won a national championship, people might go, oh, wow, if we would have given him the player, that certainly could be something that could happen. Or, on the flip side of it, Morgan comes in and the program just takes off. And you just go, oh, maybe he was holding us back. There's all kinds of scenarios, and it's hard to say what really will happen, but I hope that whatever goes forward has no bearing on what he did here, because it was truly remarkable. I've just been so impressed with how they've handled things with what they've had to work with. I mean, they just haven't had the same kind of personnel that other people have, and he's just done a remarkable job with it. And all-time winningest coach at Utah, just did some tremendous things here, and so I hope that's what everyone kind of thinks the most of, regardless of what happens moving forward.
Agreed. Now, if we move into the potential of something else coming his way and having a second act, I know you referenced the University of Michigan, and we'll see what happens there. I know a lot of names. Jed Fish, I think, is the current Vegas favorite. Kenny Dillingham's name has been floated out there. We were talking about this earlier. If he did take another job, I don't see it being like a rebuild, right? Like at the age of 66, you probably want to step into a ready-made situation, make sure that you have everything you need as far as support, and Michigan would fit the bill. The other scenario that I think is, and certainly with what's happened with the Chiefs as of late, they're not going to go to the playoffs, and they just lost Mahomes for the season. We know that Witt and Andy Reid are good buddies. I could kind of see a role there, but what sort of dynamic do you think would make sense for Kyle to answer the phone?
Well, it's an interesting point because, maybe he doesn't want to be a head coach anymore. Maybe he goes, look, I've done this. You can have it. I would just love to go back to being a coordinator or maybe being some kind of, analyst or advisor and going to a place like the Chiefs would be. I think it would be fascinating. They're all the time. These college coaches are like, can I coach at that next level? There's always that. I remember Lavelle coming up to me, Lavelle Edwards, because I played in Detroit, and he had been courted by the Lions at one time, and he asked me a lot of questions. I mean, he was just like pelting me with questions about the Lions. And this was after Lavelle was retired. And so I always think there's kind of that in the back of somebody's mind, and some guys go and do well and some guys don't. And so, maybe Kyle has the itching for something like that, or like you said, I don't think he goes into some rebuilding process, but if he could step into a kind of plug and play type of thing. I do know this, that I don't think he'd ever want to coach in a situation where he didn't have the resources and the support, and that's just like pulling your hair out, type of situation. And so it would have to be something where they've committed to, really putting the resources and getting the players. And I could see him doing something where he got into something like that. But I think it'd have to be pretty special for him to do it, though.
Yeah, and look, the other thing that I think needs to be underscored, and the Salt Lake Tribune did a good job of reporting this last week, Witt signed an amendment to his contract where initially I believe it was like a 5-year kind of retirement soft landing as a special advisor where he was going to get, $850, $900K. Last year he signed a revision where it's 2 years and it's 3.6 mil for 2 years. You might as well just do that, right? For 2 years. Just
right.
Take a little bit of a break, like decompress, spend the time with your family. I mean, Kyle's not there, and you know this better than anybody. There are a lot of guys in sports that will say, hey, I'm going to retire to spend more time with my family. And you're like, you don't give a rip about your family. You're not going to spend any time with them. Kyle's not one of those people. He wants to spend time with his kids and his grandkids, and he has a lot of interests, as we all know, skiing, golfing. I guess he loves to play tennis as well. And certainly it's none of my business, and Kyle's his own man. But if I was his friend, I would say, dude, just do this for 2 years, cash those checks, enjoy your life. And then at that point, if you want to do something else, then just do that, right? That seems to make the most sense.
Yeah, I get really nervous when, someone's left the building and they've been a very influential force and they're still hanging around. I don't know what advisory means. If it's just kind of this is your severance package, we're letting you go and we're going to pay you half of your salary for the next 2 years. If that's what it is, and we really don't want you around, then that's probably a good thing for him. Absolutely. Why not do that? But if it's having some capacity still in the building, I think that's just a nightmare. I think it could get toxic. I think because Morgan wants to put his stamp on things. He wants to be his own guy. I remember Steve Young talking about Bill Walsh still being in the building after he retired when George Seifert was there, and it was awkward. It was really weird, the whole situation. So, yeah, if it's just cashing checks and playing tennis, why not? And maybe it's just, maybe there's not an opportunity, but maybe one does come up down the road that might be enticing. I don't necessarily see Kyle being done coaching. When he gets back and how, I don't know.
Yeah. And look, Coach, and this is not a great comparison. There's some apples and oranges here too, because the money's just different now. But Coach Mack I mean, he still to this day runs football camps over in Hawaii, right? Like a lot of these guys who, leave a program or leave a job. Gary Anderson, it feels like every other year he was like, all right, I'm at Oregon State now. I'm at Wisconsin. Okay, I'm back at Utah State. Now he's at BYU. Like a lot of these coaching lifers, Scott, don't know what else to do. Like if they have an opportunity to stay in the game, I feel like they all try to do that.
Yeah, Kyle said before, he's not going to be like his dad. He's not going to be a lifer. When he's done, he's done. And I believe that. I think that's true. I just don't think he's done with his time yet. I don't think he's going to coach till, well into his 70s or until they kick him out of the building. But I certainly think that he's probably, I think there's still some gas left in the tank to do it, and I don't see him being, like Dennis Erickson. Dennis came here and coached for a while, and Gary, and even John Peace. I mean, he coached in the NFL and came back, and I don't see Kyle being one of those guys. I don't see him being like a guy like, oh gosh, I can't even remember his name now. Oh wow! He just got fired from the Raiders, and he was a coach at UCLA. Why can't I remember his name?
He just got fired from
his offensive court. Yeah, Skip Kelly.
Oh, Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly. Yes.
Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
Well, Chip's skipping all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't see Kyle being that guy.
Okay, let's move over to Morgan. And before we get to Morgan specifically, I wanted to ask you a question about, like, if Morgan was asked, okay, what do you want Witt's role to be? You're the head coach now, okay? This is your program. And in order for Morgan to do this at the peak level of his ability, he has to have autonomy now. Okay, you're the head coach. Nobody's messing with you. What do you think Morgan would prefer that the role? Because to your point, oftentimes when a legend is looming and that cloud is there, and I don't mean to call it a cloud in a negative way, but as you outlined, maybe in the past it could be a little bit awkward. If you're Morgan and you've been waiting for this, and you have the keys to the car now, do you think he would want him around a lot, or what do you think he would prefer the role looks like?
Well, I think it depends a lot on what the true nature of their relationship is. And I don't think anyone really knows, but I would imagine it's probably really good. And I think Morgan would always be extremely respectful for Kyle. I think he would be very accommodating to him as far as, being around and what, I don't think he would, I don't think he'd ever, shut him out. I don't think Kyle would be the kind of guy that would hang out either. I think he'd be the kind of guy that just said, hey, I'm here to help you out, support you, do whatever I can, whatever you need, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to be hanging out at the program. I think it's almost too early for something like that. Maybe it's, hey, could you put like one of those red phones in your house and I can just call you in an emergency and just, pick your brain. Something behind closed doors, something that's just more, could you give me some advice, or what did, how did you handle this? Or, whenever someone buys a company, they buy a new company and they go, we want you to stay on in an advisory role to kind of help us understand personnel, help us understand processes, help us understand, kind of everything really that's going on. And I don't think that's all bad, provided that, he's on good terms with everyone there. And I don't know what that is, but, if I'm Morgan, though, it's got to become my program. And it's got to be one of these things where I'm grateful for the people that, mentored me, and I learned a lot from all these people. But if Morgan isn't authentic to himself, if he doesn't make the program his, if he doesn't put his personality on it, then I don't think people will respond to him. And I think that's even the fans. If he's trying to be something he's not, if he's trying to be Kyle Whittingham, it's a bad move. You got to believe in it. And I don't think Morgan's going to do that. He's too smart for that. But you certainly want to kind of stay away from, just kind of having that crutch all the time. It's like, you've ripped the Band-Aid off, you go on, you're a big boy, you just do this, you fly solo now. It's your time to shine, and let's see what you got, kind of thing. And I don't see Kyle having any kind of really visual role or even a role on the field or, anything like that.
All right, before I say you loose, I was listening to you last week, and I've actually heard you say this before, but I wanted to bring it back on air. We are anticipating that Bird Ficklin and Devin Dampier will be back with the program. Bird signed his deal. Haven't heard anything about Devin, but I haven't heard anything that would indicate he's not. And if you were the offensive coordinator, you would have Bird under center. Yeah, I wanted you to kind of unpack as to why to our listeners.
Well, here's the thing, and it happened when Cam Rising started playing. Like everyone's play elevated. Like it just there was something electric about how he played. There was just a passion with how he played, and you when you see it, you recognize it, and it's hard to describe. And Devin Dampier is a very unique player, and if he's healthy, completely healthy, then you're going to be fine with him, but you're always going to be limited throwing in the pocket. And with Bird, that's not the case. Bird's taller. He can, and it's not even taller. It's just a sense for throwing and having an anticipation to throw, and I think it's important to be able to do that in your offense. And I think it hurt Utah in the BYU game, and it hurt Utah in the Texas Tech game when the quarterback was not complete. Now, you didn't know who Bird Ficklin was at that point because he hadn't played that much, but all of a sudden they took off the shackles. He started a game, and he was just electric from the start to the finish. And I just think he's a real talent. He's got a stronger arm. He's more accurate throwing, and he runs amazingly. I mean, to me, it's not even close who is the better player. Now, if they want to go with two quarterbacks, that to me, I think is exciting and fun. I don't know that it's something I would necessarily do, but they're so unique. They're not traditional drop back quarterbacks, so you can put them in different positions in the backfield or out in the slot or whatever you want to do. And they're playmakers, and you get the ball to them and they make plays. So I don't know that you'd want to take that away from your offense, and that could get exciting with having dual threat quarterback. It's like a quad of it's two dual threat quarterbacks in the game at the same time, and so that's multiplying what they can do. It could be a new innovation in college football that we've yet to see.
Scott, appreciate the time, buddy. Have an excellent week ahead, and we will chat soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Spence.
All right, Scott Mitchell, former Utah quarterback, of course, now on our broadcast team and part of our ESPN 700 family. Before we catch a break, America First Credit Union wants you to have your money do more for you. Let's get your money working for you. It's the holiday season, and they're offering a couple of really cool opportunities for you to make the switch from your current bank to America First Credit Union. Now, here's the dirty little secret. If you're with one of the bigger branches, like a nationwide branch or even one of the local banks, you are in business so they can profit off of you. They're not in business so your money works for you. That's why the credit union model is the way to go if you're serious about having your money do more for you, right? It's not a for-profit institution. They have over 90 branches in our state. So there's an America First Credit Union branch probably within 5 to 7 minutes of where you are right now. New member offer, $100, no strings attached, just for making the switch and opening up a savings account, a checkings account. And then the other cool thing, this is one of my favorite things about what they do, it's never too early to teach your children how money works. Get them off to a head start that maybe you weren't lucky enough to have. You can open up an account for your teen, and they're going to just give you $50. You can use that money to spend on Christmas gifts. You can use the money to kind of help your teen understand how money works. So go to americafirst.com right now for details. Official credit union of the University of Utah, Real Salt Lake, and the Utah Jazz. Or stop in one of their 90 branches today. Our good friends at America First Credit Union. We got 1 hour in the books. We have 3 hours to go. Stevenson Sylvester joins us coming up next on ESPN 700. But I look in the studio, and there is a man that looks like still he could play in the NFL. Let's make sure Sly's mic is on, hanging out with sunglasses on. So if you want to join us via YouTube, we got our guy Sly live in studio. What's up, man? How are you?
What's up? The warden let me out the house, so
I love it.
I got a couple hours on the yard today, so get to roam downtown.
Do you look like you could still play? Do you feel good? Do you feel like you're in tip-top shape? You don't at all.
Crap. This is all placebo, This is window dressing right here. No, I can still do something. I surprise myself. Mm-hmm. But I'm not trying. I'm not sitting here saying that I can. I think I could give somebody a couple good plays. But I still got the mentality. I put it there.
Okay.
But I don't know where I'm at physically to say that I could do that.
Well, I was thinking about you over the weekend. I'm watching Phillip Rivers at the age of 44 actually, go try to win a football game. And I'm older than you are. I have one more year to say I'm in my mid-40s, and then I cannot claim that next year. I do have to admit that I'm then in my late 40s. Yeah. But I'm celebrating Phillip Rivers as a win for all of us. Mm-hmm. At what point, because you start to notice it like in your early 30s where you're like, oh man, you still have the mentality, but the body just says no. At what point in your career, if at all, did you have like a physical awakening where it's like, no, I can't do it the way I used to?
Well, my career ended before I wanted it to.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I didn't get to test it, and I was kind of, even when I tore my patella tendon, I was ferociously trying to get back. Mm-hmm. I was training like crazy. I would train at my 5-6 in the morning, and then I would go with my buddy and do GC work all day. And so I'd be working on houses, doing electrical plumbing, all kinds of stuff like that. And I was the grunt. So I'm bringing the lumber and the drywall up 6 flights of stairs in some crazy condos. Yeah. And I liked that because that was my workout. And then I would go do my mother lift, and I did that for a solid 8-12 months after, and I got in the best shape of my life, but I didn't get another opportunity. So I still felt real good when I was done. I just had my time where I'm just trying to figure out what to do with life and stuff, where I haven't been, putting more attention to my athletic abilities like I used to as far as the gym and stuff like that. And so I really haven't tried. As I said, I don't know where I'm at. I know I can still dunk. That was crazy. I just went to my old teammate Justin Jones. His daughter's playing for Cottonwood, and we went to her game last week. And after the game, I was on the rim. I was like, I can still get up there. Okay, flat-footed, 2-hand on the rim. Okay, so I can still do that. So, but I'm a lot heavier. I used to be, so.
Yeah. But no more dunking over Greg Oden and such. Those days are gone.
You still remember that story?
Oh, no. We got so much feedback from that story, namely the one term that you dropped on air that was awesome.
Oh, nuts on head, yeah.
Yes, that term, Sly. All right, I wanted to frame the conversation this way because you're an athlete that knows what it's like to step aside and have to find out what else is in store for you. And now that's where Kyle is at. That's where Coach Witt is at. And we'll get to what potentially could be next, but he deserves the respect of talking about his legacy before we pontificate on possibilities of a second act. I mean, he's not retiring. He's stepping down, and Alex, his son, gave an interview to the Tribune, and if Alex says he wants to do something else, then I'll trust him more than anybody else. But you played for the man. You've been broadcasting games for a while. How do you kind of unpack and frame the conversation of what Kyle Whittingham means to Utah football?
I don't know if we have enough time. I just think Coach Whittingham is the epitome of what a head coach should be. Mm-hmm. He's the standard. He's the guy who sets the tone, and you need that. You need when he's talking about when we had Cam Rising, right? He's like, that's an alpha, right? Tyler Huntley, that's an alpha. Clark Phillips, Devin Lloyd, that's alpha. He's speaking from a place of what he knows in alpha, and what a community, what a family, what a team needs is an alpha. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what he is. And so when he's saying that, you got to believe him, because that's all he knows, right? He knows how to be a leader. He knows and is comfortable with people looking to him for answers. Yeah. Right? Yeah. From players to coaches to community to administration, they would literally, he's comfortable with people coming to him and being like, what do we do here? And making that decision, right? Making that decision in a high point of a game, everything's on the line. Your season, your career, do we go for it on 4th down? Right? Do we make the decision? And he can, no hesitant, make a decision on whether to do it or not and confidently not look back.
Yeah.
That's an alpha. And he's able to do that in so many different ways. And so Coach Whittingham, man, and I always think about my recruiting experience, right? And he still talks about it. In fact, a couple weeks ago, I think we was at the Kansas game. He was talking to me about how he came to my classroom in high school. And I was like, I can't believe you remember that, dude.
Yeah.
That was, 2005? 2006? Mm-hmm. And I remember he was wearing a gray jacket, red tie. It was an oversized jacket. I was like, he definitely wasn't in the dressing like that part, but and now he's just real slick. He's got tailor-made stuff now. Mm-hmm. But I just remember that. It was huge for me as a kid and having the head coach come to your classroom because everybody's looking like, ooh, who's that guy?
Yeah.
He's important.
Yeah.
And, he's making me feel important in high school, and he's just done that for so many guys.
Yeah.
Right? I was on the news last night. I was talking. I was just like, he's coached guys like Luther Ellis, and then Luther Ellis's kids. Right?
Yeah.
And then you talk about Steve Smith, Jay Hill, Eric Weddle, Morgan Scalley, who's been there since 2001. Right? You go into latter stages, Brian Johnson, who's had a successful career in the NFL. He's transcended so many, like Star Lotulelei, first-round draft picks. Right? He's on the team with Alex Smith. He knows all of these guys from over the years, and recently Devin Lloyd, Dalton Kincaid, Cody Barton, all these guys that we know and love. You got to understand, Coach Witt has coached all those guys at Utah.
Yep.
And so I just think that, his dedication and what he's been able to put into the game of football, everybody talks about how transcending that BYU offense was in the early 80s with Andy Reid, Mike Leach. All those guys were down there, right? That was around Coach Whittingham's time. He was around that. He's a part of all of that, man. And so just his journey and how he teaches guys how to attack the game or how to treat life in general, it translates. Everything that I was taught at Utah translates to life. And I feel like it set me up for success in so many different ways, from finding the people around me, finding my circle, my family, who I care about and what I do, how I go about my business and job, and being extremely professional about how you go about all those things with communication, with, making sure everybody there's just so many things that translated to life, and that's what he talks about a lot. Like, this is bigger than football. Yeah, this is exactly who you're going to be in life, and set yourself up for what your future looks like.
So he clearly will be enshrined into the Utah Hall of Fame. Should he be enshrined into the BYU Hall of Fame?
I'm thinking college football.
Oh, 100%.
That's what I was like, college football Hall of Fame. I've seen some guy's resume in college football Hall of Fame. I was like, Coach Witt's definitely up there.
Oh, no, he's in.
Yeah.
He's in. It might take a few years, but Kyle's in the college football Hall of Fame. But I wonder if BYU would put him in their Hall of Fame.
I mean, I don't know his BYU resume that well. I know he was a GA in the 84 team because the coach that got me into Utah was on the 84 BYU team.
Oh, okay.
And so he tells me his story all the time. He's like, because he got Jason Beck into BYU.
Okay.
He was Jason Beck's guy who got him into BYU. I was like, so why didn't you get me into BYU? He's like, Sly, you wouldn't have made it there.
You didn't want to live in Provo.
I know you already from our practices. You wouldn't have made it at BYU. I was like, right on. I look good in red. But I know Coach Witt was GAing around that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a transcendent player at BYU as well. And so I think I don't know with 30 years being at Utah if they would do that, but why not? Publicity is publicity.
Well, and also if you just view it through the prism of your alum doing amazing things, then Witt has to be in their Hall of Fame.
Has to be.
I just find it interesting to consider. I watched it on the news last night. Good work. I was doing a little TV this weekend as well. And they asked me for my Witt moment, right? Is there one? And I always talk about 2008. Every single time I was there, you were too, against Alabama. Obviously, you were part of that team that beat Nick Saban in Alabama. And here's what I wanted to ask you, because he was the defensive coordinator during Urban's undefeated season. And, of course, Kyle was a key cog in that. But the reason why I always talk about 2008 as my Witt moment is that was his arrival saying, okay, I can do this too. I'm the head coach. We can have an undefeated season. We can go to the Sugar Bowl, and we can beat Nick Saban and Alabama. And obviously, you were a huge part of that team. What did that year mean to him? What did 2008 mean to Kyle?
I love this question because it's my thoughts on my opinion. Like, I was his first recruiting class. That's my claim to fame.
Awesome.
I say it all the time. I say I am Coach Witt's first official recruiting class, and it's the best class. But I think that what I paid attention to and what I saw personally, even at that time, I was young and I still paid attention and saw this, is his ability to adapt, right? From my first year in 2006 to my second year and to what he essentially became as a coach in 2008 was very different, right? Because like after Urban, he was tight. He was rough. He was laying down laws, rules, culture changing. He was being so stern. It was tight around there, right? And practices were hard. And I feel like 2008, we had so many veterans, upperclassmen versus younger underclassmen that were contributing on the team. We had a really professional team to where he was more like hands off. I'm going to let you guys coach.
Trusted you guys.
Trusted us. Not only us, trusted his coaches.
Oh, okay.
Let the coaches coach, right? And when I got to Pittsburgh, that was the case too. I was already there, right? Those guys won Super Bowls already. I'm there with James Ferrier, Hines Ward, all these guys already. And Mike Tomlin was, these guys are running the team. We playing bad. They're holding themselves accountable. And that's exactly what Coach Witt did in 08. He was letting BJ, hold the offense accountable. Hey, this was a crappy practice. I don't like this. I remember when BJ went off at the training camp in 08. And I'm just like, okay, BJ, you got a little to it. And, we were both captains at the time. So I was like, I'm on the defense too. And Coach Witt, he's just like letting us do it. I remember we getting so many fights internally about us not doing the right things, not keeping up.
Oh, interesting.
And he let it happen. Right?
Yeah.
And we know it, leave it on the field. It is what it is. But that brotherhood made us stronger to hold ourselves accountable. And, of course, you saw what happened with that.
Yeah, and, to continue this conversation, it obviously – I always say this, Coach Mack built the foundation, Urban built the mansion, then Kyle built the estate, right? But Urban's 2 years here, I'll always look back on as something that changed the expectation of the fan base. And when the fan base experienced beating the brakes off of BYU, having an undefeated season, going to a Fiesta Bowl, it's like, okay, this is who we are now. And then Urban leaves, and there's this
void.
Yeah, well, void's a good term, but there's also this fear across the marketplace where it's like, wait, was that just a fever dream? Was that a moment in time? Or is that who we can be moving forward? And so Kyle takes over, and I don't care what revisionist historians say now. There were a lot of people that were like, wait, is he the guy that can continue this build? And so for him to put his stamp on that question in 2008 to say, yes, I am the guy, I don't know if I would say that gave him confidence. I don't know if I would say that answered questions, but I will always believe that was such a paramount moment in time for him to answer questions that so many people in the community had.
Well, I think Coach Whittingham is a guy who has unwavering confidence.
Period. End of story.
End of story.
Yeah.
But I think it was more of a reassurance.
Okay.
Right? Because he was a part of that. As I said, I think that he was ready to take over for Coach Mack, and they gave it to Urban.
Okay.
Right? And so him taking over after Urban, he had proven something to himself too. But he's like, he knows, like, I know this formula. This isn't like Urban Meyer wasn't doing anything crazy. We recruit, we implement great game plans, we have great processes, and we go out there and play ball, right? We can do that, right? And so he was slowly adjusting. That's why I said, like, I really noticed the change in him from 06 to 07 and then what we did in 08. There was a change. Yeah. And I don't know, it's been a while for him. I don't know if he realizes that, but like there was a lot in empowering, his coaching staff, from Coach Anderson, being the defensive coordinator, right? Another head coaching guy that's on the team. So that's supporting, right? Andy Ludwig, to Kalani Sitake, other position coaches, A-Rod, all these guys who are great guys, those were all position coaches on that team. And I think that Coach Witt, and that's why I said, like, the head coach has to be the ultimate motivator, right? Yeah. You're motivating players, coaches, administration, community you're motivating everybody around you, right? And you're doing it in different capacities, right? You can do it from your aura. Coach Witt has a great aura, right? You walk in the room,
you can just feel it, yeah.
He's confident, right? And so that instills like, I believe in that guy. I don't even know that guy right there, but the way he walks, I got it, right?
Yeah.
And then the players, you got to have words in moments of, I remember when we lost 3 of the first 4 games in 2007, right? And some of the guys were just like laughing around. He would teach. That was a teaching moment, right? Teaching us like, no, when we lose, you guys got to take this stuff seriously.
Yeah.
And he would give up stories about old guys like Bo Nagahe and all these. They took it seriously, and that's why we didn't lose, because of these guys said this will never happen again. And that's what we understood, and we took that into 2008 in our whole preparation, man. So he's just the ultimate motivator in so many different capacities, and I just hope he realizes how many people he's affected and touched over the years.
One more 2008 question, because I always wonder about this, because I was on the sideline watching what happened. And, of course, I had covered the team all year, and I was at, all the games. So I knew you guys were a good football team. Mm-hmm. There was something extra that day. There was some sort of secret sauce. You came out on fire on both sides of the ball. BJ, offense, you, defense. What was the vibe in the locker room like before the Bama game in 2008? Did you guys just know, like, no one thought you were going to compete with them? No one thought you were going to win, unless you were kind of in the media space that had watched you guys all year. Did you guys just have some sort of like, they have no idea what's about to hit them prior to kickoff of the 2008 Sugar Bowl? What was the vibe in the locker room?
No, I mean, you don't know what an opponent knows, right? We've never played Alabama before, so you don't know exactly, what their mentality is or what it is. You just know what you've seen on film. And I wish I could answer this question for you, but I don't know what anybody else was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was so locked in, you have no idea.
Oh, I remember watching you.
And so, like, even right now, I just remember I was so tunnel visioned as far as I'm about to beat the brakes off of somebody. Like, no, you didn't want to fight me that day.
Yeah.
I was willing to die. I don't know what the heck was going on. I was about to tear somebody's head off. And what I noticed was, as a captain, it's the same thing as a head coach. People were going to follow your guys. So starting it off, I knew in games, I don't know, because I've been a sports nerd for all of my life, right? My cousin's playing games in the hallway, and I'm watching ESPN, right? I watch NFL films, NFL, all that history. I love that. And for me, from basketball to all kinds of different things, I know in team sports, it starts with somebody. There needs to be something to evoke some kind of emotion, right? And just the game before that, we got to fight with BYU before the game started.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody was locked in, right? And I may have started that fight, but I knew that was the same thing going into this Alabama game. We have to show no fear.
Yeah.
Right. And that was me at the coin toss. I wanted to make sure that they knew I wasn't scared of you. Right. And then even more so, it's more than talking the talk. You got to walk the walk.
Yeah.
So we made that sack at the beginning of the game. Right. And that was just like, oh, okay, he bout it. Right. He ain't just talking. He really serious. Alabama can't mess with us. And BJ was in his own lane. I know BJ was locked in too. So it takes somebody to get things started, and then everybody rallies around, and you just feel the energy go out. And so, yes, I think we was all locked in. I think we all wanted it, but there was still, you're a little unsure. So you need some kind of reassurance factor right there, and it starts with somebody. And it's always somebody who has to go out there and get it started.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, okay, we can do this.
Yeah. No, I was on the sideline with just this smile on my face. I'm like, I cannot believe that. I knew you guys were going to compete. I just didn't think you were going to blow their brakes off the way you did. It was fun. All right, we alluded to this earlier. As I said, the way I've covered this story is, first and foremost, Kyle deserves us to talk about what he means to this program. But Alex Whittingham himself gave an interview to the Salt Lake Tribune saying, yeah, there's probably a lot of juice left in him. This is not a retirement announcement. It is a step-down announcement. Right. If there's a second act for him, what do you think that might look like?
Nothing. As a head coach?
Yeah.
I don't see him.
You don't see him being a head coach?
I don't see him being a head coach.
Yeah.
I like him being auxiliary, assistant, helping out. He's a guy that has a crap ton of experience from the head coaching stage to the media side. Honestly, these last 5 years of Utah football has felt like 15.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And so I think that he's just a tremendous asset on so many levels.
Yeah.
Right. He now understands, excuse me, he now understands offense to a T, right? And his specialty, to me, Coach Witt's specialty is time management.
Oh, okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people understand how important time management and special teams are to a thing. And that's what he puts a lot of emphasis on.
Mm-hmm. So
if he's a coach, he could be the special teams coordinator.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
And he would love that. He would make. I'm telling you what, he'd be like Coach John Peace. he was coaching our team. He made Louis Sakota, Ben Broman, Clint Maurer do tackling drills, and bro, we were laughing because we're like defensive guys, and Coach Peace is making them do all the tackling stuff that we were doing. I was like, little Louis over here, busting up these dummies. And I think Coach Witt is going to make sure that like if he was in charge of special teams, just say our special teams would just be elite. Right, because that would be all his focus is. But I just think that he has a crazy amount of experience that I don't think can be undervalued, and it's nothing but an asset, and a resource that we got to take care of. And I think him and Morgan have a tremendous relationship that Morgan can trust and confide in Kyle if he ever needed to where it's not like, oh, I don't want to ask Kyle because I'm gonna feel like, no, it's like I trust Kyle that he wants the best for me and this university, and so we're going to make the best decision.
Well, the Tribune also uncovered in the same piece that Jason Patacchio interviewed Alex Whittingham, they uncovered a piece of information where Kyle signed a new clause in his contract last year where initially it was a 5-year, okay, when you retire, you get 5 years as a special assistant, and we're going to pay you, it was like $950K. Excellent money. Well, he either renegotiated or elected to turn that into a 2-year deal where he's being paid like $3.6 million for 2 years to be a special advisor. So if Witt asked me, which he never would, but if I was like Kyle's confidant or close friend, I'd be like, dude, go do that for 2 years. Go cash $3.6 million checks and go play golf and tennis and then maybe call your buddy Andy Reid and say, hey, like why not just chill for a couple of years? Do you think that's not how he's wired?
First of all, I don't think Coach Witt knows.
Okay.
The competitive nature is something that I would bet he would say. It's kind of like the saying that I believe this too: God laughs at your plans, right?
Sure.
And it's the same thing as far as competitive nature. You don't know what's going to bring the next day. So when he's choosing to step down, or even last year when he thought it was going to be his last year, and you get that competitive edge, just that time of year, it's recruiting, it's building teams, it's making sure guys are lifting, and you get that little wind, and you're just like, I got to do it again.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can never understand exactly what competitive is. So again, I'm giving my humble opinion. I have no idea.
Yeah, none of us do, really. Yeah.
I think that whatever's going to drive Coach Witt, he's going to. And right now, I think his biggest focus is he wants to be grandpa.
Yeah.
Right. He's got grandkids that are growing up and at perfect ages where he can take them all to do whatever. And he's got beaches that he's got to visit. He's got Disneyland that I can't wait to see Coach Witt waiting in line at Disneyland. That's going to be funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I don't think so. I think he's comfortable with where he's at. I think him and Jamie have had many conversations about this on when to go. And what to do and how to transition and that little bit of information about that 2-year bump is great. It's awesome. It'll give him time to really take a backseat from head coaching, going to cold turkey, right? And so yeah, man, I think the longer he's around, he'll be a media darling for us.
Yeah,
and we'll love it.
Well, and what a beautiful life, right, that he's built. What a beautiful place to be, to enjoy like the back nine of your life with endless resources and a family who he genuinely cares about. There's so many guys, as you know, Sly, in pro sports, like, I'm retiring to spend more time with my family. You're like, no, you're not, you liar, right? But Kyle, like that means a lot to him, sincerely, yeah.
Oh yeah. Kyle brings his family everywhere. It means he wants to make sure that everybody's taken care of. It's his head coaching. It's in him. It's ingrained in him, and that's another competitive edge. And,
yeah.
Can you relinquish that? You're normally in charge of 150 plus people. Like, Can you whittle that down to the 20-30? And so family is big to him, and that's why it's a mantra here at the University of Utah, family on three, because that's who he is, right? And so his family traveled to all the games. They were with him and experienced all the highlights. There's been a lot of highlights going around the last week, right? And I see his family in every single video.
Yep.
Right? On the sidelines, all the biggest wins, from Brandon Burton's blocks, field goals to the last second Hail Marys. His family's always there, and I think that's what he wants. He wants to make sure that his family experiences all of that with him, and this next chapter of his life is going to be nothing different.
All right, last thing, I'll set you loose on this, and thanks again for rolling in. We've known for years what the contingency plan was.
Yes.
And so it was made official over the weekend that Morgan becomes the 24th coach in Utah football history at the age of 46. He's got a lot of juice. He's young. He's ready for this. How much of the future do you think will look like what we've experienced, and how much of it do you think Morgan's going to try to adjust to fit who he is?
I mean, I wish I could say that I know. I don't, right? I know that all I know is Morgan is very passionate, right? And I think he's another confident guy. He knows what he wants. He knows what to do. Again, these last 5 years has felt like 15.
Yeah.
And just imagine being the assistant head coach around this tumultuous, whatever you want to call it, football.
Yeah.
College football, from NIL, the Ty Jordan Aaron Lowe situation, the 2 Rose Bowl ups and then the 2 down years, to coming back to this past year. He knows what he wants as an offense. He knows what he wants as a defense. I'm sure he's been in talks with whoever he wants to be his DC or calling plays or however he wants that run, or he's been training somebody this entire. Morgan is no dummy, right? Yeah. And I just think that he's going to be an excellent coach for Utah. Now, he may have a great first year and then a down 2 and 3 years, right? You don't know, but I think that he's a guy that we can ride with, right?
Yeah.
And for me, if you're looking at this as a Utah fan, what do you want in your guy in charge? You want a guy who's loyal, who's going to stay here, right? And Morgan Scalley, ever since I've met him back in 2007, has been all about Utah. There's been nothing else. All the highlight tapes that I watched when I'm learning about Utah is Morgan Scalley's dedication and how much he loves this university. So as a Utah fan, what else do you want? You want a guy who's loyal, who cares about this community, who knows this community, who grew up in this community, has a family in this community, and cares about this university more than anything else. That's Morgan, right? And so having a Utah alum take over, be the head coach, has been in and around this program since 2001. There is no better situation that we can go into.
I agree, man. Good stuff today, as always. Great to see you. Be good. We'll chat soon, okay?
You got it, man.
Stevenson Sylvester, captain of the undefeated 2008 team that beat Bama in the Sugar Bowl. Want to remind you that ESPN 700 and the Rocky Mountain Chevy dealers invite you to help those at the road home this holiday season with needed blankets, coats, shoes, hats, and gloves. Drop off donations at any Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer. Visit ESPN700sports.com for dealer locations. Spread the warmth and help others find their way home. And join us at the Midvale Road Home coming up on December the 18th and the 19th for our Mediathon. All right, we'll catch a break. Been teasing this since the start of the show. Coming up on the other side, some new information about private equity with both the University of Utah and the Big 12 and what it could mean potentially for this economic infusion that I've been told now could be utilized university-wide, not just for the athletic department. So we'll get into that coming up. We still have Zach Moss and Bill Riley set to join us. Busy Monday show. Keep it here on ESPN 700. What happens to a radio show if neither the producer or the host is in studio when the bump starts playing?
You're backing up the bathroom out there.
Whew, man. And also, I
think that we just play music, though, if you're genuinely asking.
So we could just be like one of the other Broadway stations that plays music.
Just some Rolling Stones, Beast of Burden.
Great song.
For your 3 o'clock hour. Next up, giving away tickets to Monster Jam.
You could do, I am telling you, and I will experience this coming up on Thursday and Friday when we're at the road home. I chose, if you're going to be in the radio business, be a FM DJ. Don't do this. We chose the wrong approach.
Not giving away Monster Jam tickets, just to be clear. That was an impression of an FM DJ.
Don't text in, please. No, but every year at the road home, I remember I was set up next to, I think it was FM 100, and I didn't know the gentleman next to me. He didn't know me. And we did a segment where it was guest-free, and so we were just talking for like 22 minutes straight. I go to break. He's like, hey, do you do that every day? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you fill a segment by just talking for like 22 minutes?
Sports radio, baby.
I'm like, that's what we do. And then I hear him like, hey, welcome back in, FM 100. Merry Christmas. This is Mannheim Steamroller. And then just chill.
Yeah.
For like 15 minutes. That was Mannheim Steamroller. Catch a break. More coming up next. Like, that's the gig. This is not the gig. If you're going to do radio, that's the gig.
Yeah, you could do worse. Hanging out, DJing, listen to some music, giving away tickets, all of the above.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, great stuff from Sly today. Live in studio for about a half hour. Going to bring in Zach Moss. He'll join us. And then Bill Riley voiced the Utes. So a couple things here I wanted to get to. We kind of teased this out at the top here. It's been an interesting week and a half, and if we're honest, a little bit longer than that, where all of us have been trying to get our NBA in finance over the course of a matter of days with all of this private equity information. So, of course, as we've covered from the minute it was announced, the University of Utah has struck their own private equity deal with Otro Capital, and a 9-figure infusion of cash is on the way. So Friday, as if we needed more information to break, the Big 12 is now, according to Ross Dellinger, the Big 12 is nearing an agreement with Redbird and Weatherford Capital for a cash infusion of millions. Okay, so the number's roughly about $30 million per school. At least that's the reports, thereabouts. But a couple of pieces of information have been revealed over the weekend where if all schools, quote, choose to participate, it would deliver $500 million to the Big 12. It's a strategic business partnership with the firms, but it is not an equity play, which is really interesting. Big 12 not giving up any stake or equity to the firms, and no final decision has been made because just like the Big 10, the Big 12 needs a thumbs up from all of its member institutions. What do you do if you're the University of Utah here? And I find this interesting to unpack because the Big 10, really the Big 10's motivation, when you dig into it, is steeped in one school and one school only. And that is The Ohio State University, who, if I had to guess, is going to win the national championship. Of course, they lost to Indiana, but they're the Vegas favorite to win the national championship. They're probably the best team in college football. And they're probably the best team in college football when you expand it over the course of the past 4 or 5 years. They're among the biggest revenue generators in the sport. According to reports, Ohio State generated about $260 million of revenue last year. To give you a frame of reference, the University of Utah's athletic department generated $109 million in revenue last year, which is not nothing, but Ohio State doubled that and then some. Part of that is the Big Ten TV deal and the distribution each member institution receives if you're part of the Big Ten. It is the most lucrative TV deal in all of college sports, including the SEC. And part of that is simply the Ohio State University, the brand, the team, the jersey, the alumni base that travels as well as any school in America. Here's the kicker. They're $37 million in debt. A business that generated $260 million in revenue is reporting a debt of $37 million. Now, as we outlined last week, not all debt is created equal. How much of this is cash that they took to infuse into the program, and what's the percentage on the debt? And if they're turning the cash into revenue that's generated at a higher percentage than the debt, then they can service this. But the reports are Ohio State went to the Big Ten and said, we need money. So the Big Ten solution was to formulate the framework of a deal with a private equity firm. But the two schools that said no are USC, that obviously it's not in the business of needing cash. USC's athletic department is flush with donors, and they generate a tremendous amount of revenue themselves. And then Michigan, who I believe has $20 billion as far as their endowment goes. They don't need it, so they're saying no. And as a result of USC and Michigan saying no, the deal essentially for now is dead on the vine. And the reports are Ohio State is really upset about this because they were going to rely on this infusion of cash to kind of service their massive debt to get back into a good place as far as their entire athletic department goes. As far as being in a good place for their football program, breaking news, they're fine. Again, they're probably going to win the national championship, and they have one of the top 5 recruiting classes in all of college football again. But this is not just a football problem for Ohio State. This is a problem for their entire athletic department. So they were relying on the Big Ten to get this deal across the finish line so they could be infused with cash to figure some things out. But it was two schools. It was Michigan and USC that pushed back, and obviously those are probably 2 of the 3 biggest brands in the Big Ten, Ohio State being in that conversation. Oregon, of course, is up there. Maybe in a different year we could have a conversation about Nebraska or UCLA or Penn State, but of course those programs have been down. The Big Ten simply has a tremendous amount of brand equity because of who their member institutions are. Indiana, who suddenly is a football school, historically speaking, is one of the best basketball schools in America. We've already discussed Ohio State, Oregon, USC, Michigan. That is not even mentioning Iowa, Washington. Reference Nebraska, UCLA, Penn State. Wisconsin in a different year. Maryland has won a national championship in basketball. Michigan State, both a basketball and a football school. Typically, their football program is really down now, though. Like, just that brand equity alone could, I would imagine, generate not $500 million of interest from a private equity firm, but probably a ton more. I mean, the valuation, because I referenced this Substack earlier, and I want to give this guy credit. I hate media members that steal other people's work without giving them credit. It's called Doomberg. The Substack is called Doomberg. And last year, it's a financial Substack, but he's a college football fan, so he's been trying to write about what private equity means for college football and college athletics. And last year, he did a deep dive on the valuation of the University of Texas. Not the Texas football program, the University of Texas. Okay, so the Texas football program is thought to be the most valuable football program as far as what it's worth in all of college athletics. The move to the SEC probably even ups their valuation. And I talked about this last week. There is part of me, and we're going to get Taylor on the show. There's part of me that believes that the University of Utah may have undervalued who they could potentially be should one of two things happen. Number one, Utah gets a Big Ten invite. I know a lot of people roll their eyes at that. It's not a possibility. But I can tell you there are a lot of people up on the hill about a mile away from where we're broadcasting that do believe that that's a possibility and have had conversations about making that move. Does that mean it's going to happen? No. I have no idea whether or not the Big Ten is interested. Of course, Utah would be, as I referenced earlier, the most valuable television deal in college athletics belongs to the Big Ten Conference, right? So if Utah gets the call, of course they'll make the jump. So that's number one. But number two, the other possibility that continues to be out there is what I perceive to be an inevitable move, and honestly speaking, what I perceive to be the only solution to the problems that is plaguing collegiate athletics, and that is move into the pro model. Do it yesterday. Rip off the Band-Aid and just do it. I know a lot of people scoff at it, but guys, if you're still holding on to the farce of the student athlete and the sanctity of amateurism, that is a you problem. You have not been paying attention. I'm not saying I love it. I'm saying I'm a grown-up and understand the reality of where we're at now. So rip off the Band-Aid and do it yesterday, because we now have 4 to 5 years of being in this space of ambiguity and lack of regulation as a result of the changes that have come to the sport. And what does private equity love the most? As we talked about earlier, private equity, the things they love the most are areas of commerce where there's a tremendous amount of cash flow without a tremendous amount of regulation, because it allows them to make these backroom deals. And oh, by the way, there's this conversation about, well, wait a second, Congress might get involved here. The government is owned by private equity. These private equity firms would love it if the government gets involved because they would stand to benefit. There's nothing that gets in the way of private equity in a capitalist society. A lot of people refer to it as essentially predatory financing because they identify areas of commerce that is able to develop a tremendous amount of revenue generation without a lot of regulation, because that's when they can get involved and really kind of make their own rules. Now, the good news, as we discussed last week, is Otro has a history of buying, a stake in companies that gives them control. Otro's ethos up to this point is they buy control, and then they go in and they have final decision making. They have the final say, and that allows them to do whatever they want. If they want to cut costs, and that means firing people, if they want to cut costs and that means eliminating anything that doesn't generate revenue, they can do that when they have control. Now, the good news about the way Taylor went about his business to formulate this, first of all, he was prepared, starting a 5013C, I think that's how you say it, in 2022, to basically be able to absorb a deal like this without it distracting or compromising Utah's dynamic of being a publicly owned institution, which is what they are. The University of Utah, publicly owned institution. This doesn't violate any of those. This doesn't violate any of the stipulations and rules because of Taylor's ability to see around corners and his ability to see what the future was probably going to hold, right? By starting this, I think it's 5013C. You can correct me if you'd like. It is on the Substack that had the ability to formulate a partnership with, which is what they've done with Otro now, to start the Utah Brand and Entertainment LLC, a for-profit endeavor that doesn't get in the way of this red tape that Utah has to traverse as a publicly owned institution. So credit Taylor for this. But the other nice thing, as we talked about last week, is Otro did not buy control. They have 2 of the 7 seats on the board. We haven't seen the percentages yet. My guess is it's going to be 30 to 40% when it comes to the equity they own now, but that's not close to 51, which is what you need to have control. Because if they did buy 51% and they had control, they would probably have 4 of the 7 seats. And that's where, as a Utah fan, you would have to panic. Now, there's part of this where, as a Utah fan, your life is probably going to change. There's part of this that, as a Utah fan, your consumer experience is going to be more expensive. I can't run from that. Because I don't care how many seats they have on the board. If they're giving you $500 million, and let me pause because this has been reported inaccurately, the $500 million infusion is not just Otro. The $500 million infusion is a combination of whatever Otro is going to put in and whoever in our community is part of this super secret Skull and Bones club that was able to buy into this and get pieces of equity of their own into this project, Utah Brands and Entertainment LLC. I don't know who the names are. My guess is you're going to hear at some point that it's the names we all know because their names are on the stadiums. And then, the Garfs and the Huntsmans and the Eccles, the names that we all know are probably the people that have been involved. And I'll tell you, this is a little bit of a white whale because since unpacking this entire thing last week, I've heard from 5 different Utah alum who are millionaires that did not have the opportunity to invest in this. And they wonder why. I can't answer that. At some point, Taylor, Mark probably will have to field these questions. I don't know who this club is. I know a lot of rich Utah alums were not offered the potential possibility to buy in. I don't know why. But it brings me to this that could really change the scope of what this looks like. I was told over the weekend, again, this deal has the fingerprints of the president of the university. This doesn't have the fingerprints of the athletic director, even though Mark Harlan is going to be on this board as the chair. And that has to be a dynamic that's brought into play because we'll see what the other seats are. And that is going to be a fascinating revelation because if the other seats are filled by somebody from the business school, somebody from the medical school, somebody from the hospital, or Taylor himself, which I don't know. I don't know if Taylor has the time that will indicate that what I was told over the weekend is probably the case, which is this. Taylor's goal here is to utilize this, we'll continue to use the $500 million number, but to utilize the $500 million in economic infusion for the entire institution and not just the athletic department, which tracks if you think about it, because as the president of a school like the University of Utah, athletics is what, 10 to 15% of your energy, your points of emphasis, maybe more because of how much money the football program brings in, and you need it. But if you think about it through the prism of a macro viewpoint and not just in a vacuum, which is what we do in Sports Talk Radio because we cover sports, the chasm between academia and athletics is nothing new. A lot of jealousy that goes around if you're an English professor and you get a press release that your football coach is being paid $7 million a year or whatever it is. And you're like, well, wait a second. You're saying what I do isn't important? No, what we're saying is what you do doesn't generate revenue, which is the adult conversation about the way capitalism works, love it or hate it, like eat what you kill. If you can generate $109 million from the English department, guess what? We're going to pay you $7 million a year. You just don't generate any of it. But the jealousy and the chasm between academia and athletics is nothing new. So is it really out of the realm of possibility that a business plan generated by the president of the university, and that's what this has been, to my estimation, this is Taylor Randall, who's a very sharp, smart, calculated man. Once this announcement is made, if you're with the hospital, if you're with the business school, if you're with the law school, if you're with any other portion of the university, are you calling the president and saying, well, wait a second, can we get a piece of that over here where we're, trying to save lives as opposed to the young men that play a children's game over in the stadium? Because I think initially the belief was $500 million coming in. Utah's going to go buy a quarterback. They're going to go buy a linebacker. They're going to go buy an edge rusher, a wide receiver. I don't think that's how this is being distributed. Excuse me. I think step number one is servicing the debt, which, as I understand it, was about $17 million based off of revenue and expenses a year ago. Step number two is, what does Taylor want to do with it? Upgrades to the stadium? How much of the input comes from Otro to make sure the revenue is generated to get their return on investment, which is all they care about? And then, is there an NIL piece? Does the business school need a new building? Does the hospital need upgrades? Like, this is a lot more complex than I think we initially understood. And honestly, only time will tell to see how it's executed. But some interesting stuff coming down over the weekend. All right, we'll catch a break. We got 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Zach Moss, Bill Riley, that's your 4 o'clock hour. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, Monday Night Football tonight between the Dolphins and the Steelers will conclude your weekend in the NFL. And you can hear that game on our radio station. Both teams actually still in the hunt. The Steelers actually lead that division. So stay tuned. We're going to be joined by Bill Riley coming up. And, of course, the news of the day and weekend is the retirement. Well, excuse me, Coach Witt stepping down, not retiring. So we've been bringing in Ute alums for the past few days, and we'll continue to do that right now with our buddy Zach Moss on a Monday afternoon. Hi, Zach. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well. Appreciate the time as always. So, of course, we need to start with your thoughts and your perspective on what Kyle Whittingham means to University of Utah football as he steps down after 21 years as the head coach.
Yeah, definitely was shocking news to see him walk away. I don't think anyone truly expected that. I thought he would get another year for sure after coming off of a season that the team just had and things of that nature, and see where they can keep going and things like that. But definitely was a little bit shocking, but it's going to be so different not seeing Coach Witt on the sidelines every Saturday in the white cycles. And there's no argument to me that he is the greatest head coach that the program has ever had.
What does Coach Witt mean to you personally, Zach? I mean, you were an awesome player that certainly could have gone to plenty of colleges, but elected to play for Kyle and the University of Utah, and you parlayed your awesome college career into an NFL career. So what does Kyle Whittingham mean to Zach Moss?
Stability, leadership. Those are some of the first things I think that Coach Witt helped instill in me, just watching him every single day. Talking about first time on campus and things of that nature, and taking those different things and that I learned on the football field under his leadership, his guide, and implementing those into an NFL career and more importantly, just my everyday life with my family. When I was picking a school, I wanted to go somewhere where, I didn't have to worry about a coach potentially leaving and things of that nature. And Coach Witt was a model of consistency, and that's something that I always try to, lead with in my life, is just trying to be as consistent as possible. And you talk about a guy showing up each and every day, doing the same exact routine, just every single day, never missing a beat, right? And that was the type of guy that you want leading you, and that's the type of guy you want in front of you as a young teenager, young adult, trying to figure out who you are in this world. And shoot, for myself, being so far away from home, at the same time, him putting the right type of people around us, as on his staff and things of that nature. So I owe a lot to Coach Witt when I really sit back and I think about it.
Let's go back to a young Zach Moss being recruited out of high school where, again, you had several different offers. Why Witt? Why Utah? What ultimately motivated you to make that call?
Like I said, I think the main thing, right, I've told the story, obviously, about, snowmobiling and all those type of things that kind of made it really interesting and different from different colleges, things I could do in my spare time. But I think the main thing was the consistency of the leadership, right? We talked 21 years, 2 decades of being at the helm, and so many of the staff also has really been with a lot of the turnover to some degree, as well as with Coach Witt and stuff like that. And even to this day, now being 6 years removed from playing for Coach Witt, just this past season, I can walk in there and it still felt like home, right? Seeing so many familiar faces and things like that. And I think at the end of the day, it's kind of what I wanted, even though I didn't know outright, being much younger. But, the decision I made has led to so many different positive, successful type of things in my life. So I think the main thing that started it all was just trying to find consistency, and Coach Witt has been a great model of consistency for a very long time.
So how would you articulate, because it's interesting because we've been talking about this over the past few shows, everyone wants to play in the NFL, right? Like John Calipari, the coach of Kentucky back in the day, now Arkansas, always had this funny quip where he was asked, like, hey, how many NBA guys do you have on your roster? You'd say, all of them. Go ask them. Like, they all want to play, right, in the NBA, and all you guys wanted to play in the NFL. The reality is a very select few do, and you were one of them. But as far as just the way Coach Witt was a steward and a leader of men, and you kind of referenced this with the way, you know, you're a father and a husband, like away from the coach, the measure of the man, like what makes Kyle Whittingham Kyle Whittingham?
He's no nonsense. He's no nonsense. He's not an excuse type of a guy. And that's what he instilled in a lot of us. But he tried to make us, you know, men not on the football field, but just in life, right? Because that's the greatest impact, I think, that a coach like Coach Witt, I mean, even Coach McBride, I'd never played for Coach McBride, but every single time I run into Coach McBride, you know, you feel as if you played for Coach McBride because he takes so much care and always talking to you about how are you doing and things of that nature, right? And just that makes you feel like, you know, there's a whole different type of a care there. And it really is that with Coach Witt as well. I think that was another big reason why I came back to school my senior season to get a degree, because Coach Witt was so huge on, you know, us having success in the classroom just as much as we had success on the football field, and they had to match up. And that's paid off for me very well now, you know, now life after football and things of that nature, where when you're 19, 20, things that you don't think about on a consistent basis, myself now being closer to 30, right, you think about those things a little bit differently, and you're just so grateful that something that you couldn't see at that time period, you had people like Coach Witt and their beliefs, you know, being a positive influence on yourself, that at the end of the day, he's impacting you, he's impacting your wife, he's impacting your kids, and things of that nature, because you're learning from someone who's done it, who's been in these different places. And, you know, I think a lot of guys who've played for Coach Witt would probably say similar things on just the impact, right? It's so much further than, you know, how many catches you have or how many yards you run. It's about the race you run in life, and he's been able to help a lot of guys out in that way.
So you referenced coming into the interview, and you're not the first to say this, that you were a little bit shocked and surprised. You expected him back for at least another year. Can you kind of dig into that space a little bit more? Was that more or less the consensus of the alums, that you guys thought Kyle was going to come back for at least another year, if not more?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, this has been the first year where I've truly been able to dive into the team, you know, kind of be around and things like that, and not just watch it on TV every Saturday. And obviously it's been a few years now where the rumors of how long is he going to stay and things of that nature, and Coach Scally being obviously the next man up and stuff like that. You know, it all, for me, I assumed, you know, most of the time that's how it goes for coaches is, you know, if this is a 7-8 win team, right, maybe you can see the writing on the wall a little bit differently, but this team has success. They lost to two teams that obviously were better than them, and it kind of shows from where they're at in the, you know, one is in the college football playoffs and one isn't, but both played in the Big 12 championship game. Outside of that, you know, these guys handle their business throughout a lot of different challenges, and I didn't see where you could have Coach Witt not be on the sidelines again for next season. I thought maybe you give him one more real shot to go and try to win this thing and kind of see where, you know, booster, NIL, different type of things take place. As we've seen some of those things kind of unfold here in the last couple of weeks anyways. So for me, and I think a lot of dudes was, okay, it was a successful season, right? You can't see him walking away having all the success they just had and so many really good players. So it was definitely a shock. I'm still shocked, you know, honestly, that he's not going to be there next season. And, you know, congratulations to Coach Scally and things of that nature. But it's super hard when you don't see a legend literally on the field what you're so accustomed to, right? I mean, it's to me, it's I'm 21. I'm 28. Coach Witt's been coaching since he's at that school as the head coach for 21 years. I mean, everyone can kind of do the math. So that's a very, very shocking thing to a lot of people.
So, with that in mind, what's your insight as to what you think the process was for Kyle that landed him on this decision? Do you think there's anything about the current state of the game, the private equity deal, the way the game has changed? I mean, you know, a lot of people were wondering how a lot of coaches were going to digest the new era of college football. And we were all kind of lucky that Nick Saban retired, because then he went into media and he was really honest about all the things that bothered him. Most people believe he's the greatest coach in the history of college football. So do you think any of that came into play for Kyle, just kind of being disenfranchised with the way the sport is? Or do you really think he just kind of thought it was time?
No, I mean, my honest opinion is I believe we saw Coach Witt. I believe this team won 10 games, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We saw this team win 10 games with a ton of different people stepping up and playing different roles literally throughout the season. So I don't think the NIL and all that type of stuff truly bothered Coach Witt. He's been able to adapt each and every thing that college football has thrown at him. Right, it's 20 years, and I'm sure a lot has changed in college football in 20 years, right? And he's been able to adapt. And in a season where, you know, a lot of people don't believe they had a lot of NIL funds to go out there and really hit the portal hard, this team was still able to go and win 10 games, right, and lose to two of the teams that just played in the championship game. So you tell me, obviously, they just signed the equity thing. The Big 12 is doing some other things as well. So, you know, really, if there was ever a time to give Coach Witt a true opportunity, and he's a young dude, man. As a coach, he's a young dude to still go out there and lead these guys and things of that nature. So I don't think it's any NIL stuff that, you know, pushed them to the other side of it. I think it's a lot in the tank. Obviously, if you look at it, he said he's stepping down, not retiring. So retiring and stepping down obviously are two truly different things. So the desire and that passion and that competitiveness, I'm sure, is still in him. But obviously, I'm not in the building every single day. We're not in the building every single day, so we can't truly say. But my honest opinion is that, you know, I don't see where Coach Witt steps away legitimately without somebody or something in there happening to where it didn't align on how many more years or whatever it may have been, because, again, like I said, everything is kind of lined up perfectly to give Coach Witt, right, if you don't have another head coach in waiting, right, maybe you give him another 4 or 5 years, because Nick Saban didn't retire until he was in his 70s, and Coach Witt is not even in his 70s, right? So from all the different things, from my point of view and how I kind of see it, and being around Coach Witt and being around a lot of different successful head coaches, I didn't see where it made just true sense with everything being in a really, really good space for him right now and how it's been going for him to walk away. Again, he didn't retire. He's stepping down.
Right, which is a very important line of delineation. But I want to follow up because I find this really interesting. So I'm not exactly sure how to ask the question. So is there a chance that Kyle wanted to come back and maybe certain people did not want him back as the coach?
Yeah, that's the only thing you can kind of really probably get into. Obviously, this is all speculation.
Right.
Again, like I said, I played in NFL, you know, and that is a business. And you see on the day-to-day just some of the inner workings, and a lot of this college football stuff is turned into, you know, that type of a business, as we see with the private equity thing and all the props and the pros and the cons that a lot of people have talked on about that and how that changes things for the university and things of that nature. So for me, like I said, I don't see where you have a guy who just won 10 games It's not like he's a legendary coach that is holding on too long, whereas, okay, we're barely scraping bowl eligibility, right? We're losing portal guys, we're not getting portal guys, or there's dips, right? There's been truly, maybe outside of, the year of when all the quarterbacks were getting hurt, there has been no dips, and to respond the way they did and win 10 games and lose to the two best teams in the conference, why wouldn't you give this dude who has brought you through 3 different conferences now, right, and kept you relevant and has allowed different players to come from different states and, put so many dudes in the NFL, not just put them there, but allow them to go and have careers longer than 2 years, which is the average in the NFL. But again, it's all speculation. We won't know, I'm sure, until it ever comes out or the actual reasoning. But, like I said, for myself, I put myself in that space of just trying to analyze things. And it doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but maybe it was just time that Coach Witt decided, it's time to let Coach Scally, take this thing. And like I said, it's perfect timing for whoever was going to be the coach, right? With all the new money and NIL, things of that nature, starting to boom for the program.
Yeah, really interesting insight. And, let me just clarify before people lose their minds. Zach is just speculating on the possibilities. And ultimately, the people that know are probably Kyle and Morgan and Mark Harlan and maybe not even them. I mean, I don't know. So you referenced the language in the press release, which did say stepping down and not retiring. And look, Alex Whittingham himself gave an interview to the Salt Lake Tribune and basically said that he believes that there's something down the line there as it pertains to what could be next. What do you think that would look like, Zach, if Coach Witt took another job with a second act? What's your best guess as far as what that looks like?
Oh, that's a hard guess, man, honestly. I don't know if he comes back to the school and is in a different type of a role. I don't think that's probably where his heart is. I mean, like I said, I've been in locker rooms with this guy, obviously been in wars with this guy. He wants to be on the sideline and he wants to be the one galvanizing the troops and leading us into battle and leading us out of there victorious. That's what he's done. His life is football, so I don't see a part of him where it goes upstairs. Definitely at Utah. Maybe it's somewhere else. What does that look like? I don't know. His whole life is here in Utah. So many people always talk about his family, and he is a true family man. His family is awesome. His wife and everybody that you run into, nieces, nephews, everybody, it's awesome. So I don't see where he, uproots some of that and he leaves the state and go coaches somewhere else. I just can't see it. Obviously, he doesn't go nowhere near, that other team down south, right? So from that standpoint, I don't know where it really leads for him. But like I said, maybe we'll find out here soon. And he has a ton of grandkids, and I'm sure that's where his mind and his heart is right now.
All right, before I say you lose, what is not up for speculation or debate is who the new head coach is of Utah football. It's Morgan Scally, who, if there ever was a Utah man, Morgan certainly fits the bill. Born and raised Highland High running back, played at the University of Utah. Now, obviously has been a coach in waiting for quite some time. So my question, Zach, before I say you lose, is knowing what you know about Morgan, how much of what has already been established do you expect to continue, and how much of a new field do you think there will be in him trying to make a stamp that makes this his own program?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a new field. Like you said, he has to make it his own. Can't copy and paste what Coach Witt has done. Coach Witt is, like I said, the greatest coach in the program history, so that's a one of one, right? I believe Coach Scally has the things in place with all the new equity thing and Big 12 making different moves and things of that nature for the schools in their conference, stuff like that. So I think he has the chance to be successful. I don't know how quickly it happens. Obviously, there's going to be some turnover from some few positions next year that, offensive line is really, really good. And obviously, Fano and the other guy that we had down there most likely going to, leave to the NFL. So you're going to have a huge, huge shoes to fill with both of those guys potentially walking away from the program. But like I said, from the staff point of things, I haven't seen anything about staff members leaving or nothing like that. So it looks like Coach Scally is going to retain a lot of those guys. So from that standpoint, when you don't have a lot of the turnover, I still believe they can have success. They know where their aiming point is, which is, BYU and Tech, the two teams that they couldn't get over this past season. So from those things, I think it kind of narrows things down for Coach Scally. And, he wasn't my coach, obviously, position-wise, but, I've not seen guys who played for him have anything but positive things to say about the type of dude that he is and how he can get guys to go play above their potential. So I can see that happening the same way as a head coach and as he gets comfortable in that role.
Actually, I have one more quick for you, Zach, because we've talked to a lot of our guests, Utah alums, about this, and I want you to chime in. And if you don't want to talk about it or if you don't have the information, we can just exit stage left. There's just this conversation. Look, the fact of the matter is this. According to reports, the two highest spending teams on talent last year in the Big 12 were Texas Tech and BYU. They played for the conference championship, right? So the proof of concept is the proof of concept. What is your understanding about where we're at with Utah and how competitive that they can be in the NIL space?
They have a chance. Like I said, obviously they knew, if you follow the teams that are going to be playing for something, right, the money is going to lead you to that. And it's always it's the same, follow the money, right? So, they knew they had to make some moves and make some changes because, the way that Utah gets their money is obviously a little bit different than what Texas Tech and a BYU and how they're getting their funding and things like that. So I think if the move makes them competitive, this is a really good program. And, people who come here from different places, are actually going to really love the state, love the program, love the people that are in the building and things like that. So it makes sense. So I'm happy to see them. I'm very eager to see just how competitive they can be. I know this program is used to winning and being relevant thanks to Coach Witt and things like that. So I'm very, very eager to see just how this thing kind of plays out. And we got a couple more months to go, and we'll kind of see a little bit, huh?
Yes, sir. Well, look, man, always appreciate your time. Such an interesting time around the program, and hopefully good things ahead, Zach. Be well. We'll chat soon, okay?
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, Zach Moss, one of the best players, period, in Utah football history, not one of the best running backs in Utah football history. At Prez Moss, if you want to interact with him on social, I want to remind you that ESPN 700 and the Rocky Mountain Chevy dealers invite you to help those at the road home this holiday season with needed blankets, coats, shoes, hats, and gloves. Drop off donations at any Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer. Visit ESPN700sports.com for dealer locations. Spread the warmth and help others find their way home, and join us at the Midvale Road Home Mediathon December 18th and the 19th. We'll catch a break. The voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, stops by coming up on a Monday Drive on ESPN 700.
Quick tempo here for Utah. Devin in the gun. Now he's going to change the play as he motions Wayshawn all the way out to the right-hand side. Empty backfield here. Play clock at 10 for Dampier. Devin's going to keep it himself. Now a pop pass over the middle. Wide open Buchanan. There he goes. They're not going to get him. It's a touchdown. J.J. Buchanan, 58 yards and a Utah touchdown.
The dulcet tones of the voice of the Utes. Bill Riley bringing in with a little J.J. Buchanan touchdown call. And on a Monday afternoon, he graces us with his presence. Hello, Bill. How are you, sir?
It is truly my honor to be on your show on this Monday afternoon, Spence Checketts.
The honor is on this side of the microphone, Bill, but we do need to start. I want to start with a health and wellness check, as your Kansas City Chiefs are in a precocious situation on a number of different levels. How are we doing?
All good things must come to an end. Runs happen and dynasties end. And, this iteration of the Kansas City Mahomes era has come to a crashing halt. So we hope for the best for number 15 that he's back. But more importantly, maybe Andy Reid does a little introspection on things and they retool and get back to it here in a year or so.
You know what's weird? It seems like the higher the rise, the more stark the fall. Because I'm sitting there watching the game, and I just couldn't help but think, like, the Warriors finals against the Raptors when, like, everybody got hurt. Like, it was Durant, it was Clay, it was Steph, and they were, like, serious injuries. It seems like the higher the ride, the steeper the fall.
Oh, I completely agree. This has been kind of coming for the last couple of weeks. But yesterday, even before Mahomes tore his ACL, 3 offensive linemen went down in the first quarter. Linebacker goes down, corner goes down, and then, of course, the crushing blow at the end of the game. But, yeah, it's just one of those things. When it ends, it comes to an end big time, and that's what happened. So now I'll just kind of sit back and see what it feels like to be a Jets fan.
Like
draft in the top 11 and see about rebuilding the roster.
I'm sitting here trying to be nice to you, Bill. There's no reason you had to choose violence. Goodness gracious. You referenced maybe Andy Reid doing some introspection. I don't know if you heard, but Kyle Whittingham is unemployed. We'll talk about the potential of what's next maybe in a moment. But as I've said with all of my guests, Kyle deserves the first portion of any conversation to talk about 21 years as the head coach, 32 years as the coach, as a coach on of course, just with the program. So from the Voice's perspective, what does Kyle Whittingham mean to Utah football?
He is, in some ways, Spence, maybe the most important figure in the history of the program. As a 31-year tenured coach, from an assistant coach to a coordinator to the head coach, he transitioned them from the group of 5 to the Power 5. He won national championships. Had he been, the playoffs been around, he would have been a top seed or close to it in 08, 09 when you and I were doing shows from Deanie's Seafood in New Orleans, enjoying some po' boys and going back to our Mormon church. All of those things. Remember that guy? Remember that Alabama fan?
Oh, yeah.
He told us to do that. Anyway, I just think he's the most important figure in the history of the program because of all that he's done and meant to the program. He should have a statue outside the stadium, and maybe someday the field's named after him. But he's, to me, the embodiment of Utah football for the last 31 years. Yeah,
before we get emails, let's be clear about the story Bill is telling. We did an entire week of shows at Deanie's Seafood in New Orleans prior to the Sugar Bowl in 2008. And an Alabama fan rolled in and heard Bill called Nick Saban arrogant and then told Bill, of all people, that he needs to go back to his Mormon church. That's how that went down.
And then I went and said a rosary down at the cathedral down the street. But, yes, that was funny. And what was even funnier was watching the Alabama fans exit the Sugar Bowl to drive back to Tuscaloosa.
Indeed. And, I'm glad you brought that up because over the weekend I was asked, what is your Whit memory? What is your Whit moment? And I always go back to 2008. And I always will, because he was the defensive coordinator for Urban in 2004. They go undefeated. Of course, Kyle's a key cog. But the 2008 season was Kyle's answer to anybody who had a question as to whether or not he could keep the momentum going. Undefeated, and you cannot underestimate the fact that it was Bama in the Sugar Bowl. That's my, wit moment for me, and it could be the same for you, but do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them, Spence. One before I was even ever doing Utah stuff, when I was still at KSL doing sidelines, when they went down to BYU in 2003 and beat the Cougars 3-0 on that weird, snowy, rainy, cold day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a couple of weeks after his father had died. And I snuck in the locker room and to get some audio. And I remember Urban giving Kyle the game ball that day. For pitching it was the first time BYU had been shut out since I think 1975. It had been forever. And the emotion in that locker room and the way the players rallied around him. And I remember doing coaches shows with him. I remember being there in New Orleans with you on the field when they lifted up that Sugar Bowl trophy. The night he became the winningest coach in Utah football history, when they beat Oregon and the Britton Covey punt return. Of course, I remember him dealing with the adversity of Ty and Aaron. There's so many of those memories and moments for Kyle, for me, because I got to be close with him at coaches shows and things. So just to be able to see all those and be part of them were just so much fun for me to be along on that ride.
So now that it is official, I can ask you something that I've tried to allude to gently here and there, because, of course, you are working up there now, and I want you to stay employed and gainfully so I don't want to put you in a bad spot. When did you first get an idea oh, yeah, this actually might be coming? When did it first dawn on you that Kyle might be stepping down?
Well, I've always left the possibility open, just because I think the last few years – he's literally taken it year by year. I would have been shocked if you'd stepped aside last year after a 5-7 year, just because of the way I don't think he wanted to go out on that note, and he just called it a Twilight Zone year. But I think I've said with you and some other places that, the vibe that I got from him this year was that he was still enjoying coaching. But again, I don't know what goes on, with him, with his family, with any of that stuff. So when the news came down Friday, I was as caught off guard as anybody was. I had no real sense. I mean, like I said, I knew it was a possibility, but I had no real sense that it was going to happen. And the timing of it just kind of caught me off guard on Friday when the announcement came down.
Yeah, it was a wild scenario. And as somebody that made their way in this space for basically 2-3 decades,
yeah.
You know the deal. We put together the rundown. Porter books the show. I've got my outline. And as we're playing the intro, and I feel like they did this to me personally, Bill, because everything's about me, as you know. As we're doing the intro, I get the alert that the email spills in that he's stepping down, and we scrambled. I mean, we had to recalibrate the whole show.
Well, and I've done a bunch of those shows like you have too, Spence. In some ways, you're like, oh my God, but in some ways too, there's a little bit of an adrenaline rush with it and reacting in real time, because you get to do it sometimes with news, but you don't get it happens maybe a couple of times a year or once a year, and this is as big a news as you have in this market. So for you to be able to react in real time, and you guys have enough, between you and Porter, so many people that that have played, that are former players, that are current players, that are former coaches, all of that stuff. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt, and you have to work your tail off, in between commercial breaks and things like that. But, that's one of those shows where you sit back after you've done those 3 or 4 hours and you go, okay, we knocked that one out of the park, all things considered.
Yeah, for sure. And what am I going to do? Do another segment on if Keontae's a point guard? There's nothing else going on. So
Sensenbaugh, where does he fit in the future?
Yeah, it's just such an unwatchable pro basketball product. I think hockey team's been fun, but look, this is the thing that people care about. And this is the thing people have been talking about for a number of different years. What sort of elements, because, look, again, you handle this however you want to, but the fact of the matter is I've had, I think, 5 guests at this point, all former players, that were expecting him to come back for a year. What sort of things do you think he weighed? What sort of dynamics do you think came into play that ultimately led him to decide that, yes, this was the time?
If I had to lean one way, I would say it would be probably family. Mm-hmm. And, I know that, he's weighs that all the time, the kids, the grandkids, time with his wife, things like that, and energy for the job as well, although he is probably the youngest 66-year-old that you're going to meet anywhere. But and again, I haven't spoken to him. I've kind of given him his space. I know he and I will talk before the bowl game. I sent him a text, but he's probably gotten 8,000 of those. And the Bill Riley text is not high priority, I can assure you. So my guess would be it would be family, grandkids, spending time with family, maybe spending some more time with his mom, Nancy, who's still with us and living in Provo. That would have been probably the top factor with me. Like I said, I don't think it's energy or enthusiasm, because I still think he's got plenty of that to go. And I think we should all, at 66 years old, have the kind of energy and drive. But if I had to hazard a guess, probably family played a role in it.
So when it comes to, when you look at college football Hall of Famers, Kyle has a resume. I think he's going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Of course, he's going to be in the Utah Football Hall of Fame. Will he be in the BYU Football Hall of Fame?
It's a good question. I mean, if they were going to put him in, you would think they would have put him in by now, right? I mean, he played 40-some years ago, and he was an All-American, All-Conference. Yeah, he's a College Football Hall of Fame guy because of his playing resume and his coaching resume. I think that he's going to get a statue or a name on the field at some point at Rice Eccles and the obvious Crimson Club. Yeah, the BYU thing's interesting to me. I don't know what they'd be waiting on, but I don't know what their criteria down there are either.
Yeah, I think if it's just based off of your alumni going to do really cool things, it's a no-brainer. I think it comes down to whether or not there are still hurt feelings because he said no to them and yes to Utah.
That's true. He did say no. What was that now? 21 years ago, 22 years ago that he said no.
Yeah.
I think time heals wounds, although I think it might have helped a little bit. Tom Holmoe being AD, and I think he and Kyle were teammates at BYU, so that might have helped. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
So, of course, in addition to the news breaking on Friday, and as soon you get the email, and I'm like reading it in real time and telling Porter, hitting the talk back, like we got to do this or that or whatever. So essentially, what I did is launch into a first segment of saying thank you, launch into a first segment of saying best of luck in your retirement. And then Stuart Mandel chimes in. He's like, hey, probably not done. He's not retiring. He's stepping down. And according to Mandel, he has interest in other opportunities. Now, what I was able to learn, and you might already know this because you and Stu are close, most of Mandel's sources are agents. So what it sounds like is Witt's agent reached out to Mandel and said, look, let's capitalize on the timing to let everybody know that he's available. If there's an Act 2, what's the most likely scenario, in your opinion?
Boy, it's hard for me to see. I mean, it would have to be a really specific situation, Spence, if he went to coach someplace else. I know Michigan's name has come up because of the prominence of that but it would take a situation like that, because I just can't see, with everything that he's done here at Utah and the program that he built, I can't see him taking a rebuilding project. I can't see him going to a group of 5 school. I can't see him going to a lower level Power 4 school. I just can't. With all that he's done, I mean, in essence, you'd be starting over again, if that makes sense. And I don't know that with all that he's done here at his age, and again, he's a young 66, but he's still 66, do you want to take on a rebuild? So to me, it would have to be a really good and specific program. And I'm not saying, because I don't have any knowledge, I know what Stuart has reported. By the way, Stuart will join me on my podcast this week,
nice.
Crimson Corner,
Good.
And we'll talk about some of that stuff. It should drop sometime on Wednesday morning. But I think it would have to be a situation that's Michigan-esque, because, he's had so much success. I can't see him taking a step backwards to take on a rebuilding project, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, if I'm Michigan, I actually make the call, because there's not a safer hire.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like that's what you need right now.
If you're Michigan, Spence, you're looking for a palate cleanser.
Exactly.
I mean, let's be fair. Jim Harbaugh won a national championship, but there was a lot that went on with that. And after he left, there's been a lot of baggage that's been left over since then. You want somebody that is a palate cleanser from that. And Kyle Whittingham would be exactly that. Now, does he fit, when you get into the minutia of everything that goes into being a head coach and the program, is it a fit for Kyle? Is it a fit for Michigan? I don't know that. Only those two would know that. But you're absolutely right. Do I make a phone call? Absolutely. You're talking about a guy that's a top 10 coach in the country that built a program that had a lot less resources than Michigan has, because let's face it, Michigan's on the Mount Rushmore. It's got resources till the end of time. So, yeah, I think you would at least make that phone call and at least have the conversation with an agent or with Kyle.
And I think you make him think really hard about it because, the Tribune did some good reporting. They interviewed Alex, and Alex all but said, he's got a lot left in the tank. But in addition to that, they also, and you may have been aware of this, I certainly wasn't, that initially his post-coaching situation was a 5-year contract as a special advisor that paid him about $900K or whatever. And then an amendment last year that turned that into a 2-year deal that's like $3.6 million. And so he has got it. Of course, Whit would never ask me what to do. If I was Kyle's best friend, I'd be like, dude, do that for 2 years, cash those checks and figure something out. So whether it's Michigan or his buddy Andy Reid, because of this real nice opportunity Kyle has to maybe decompress for a couple of years, if you're going to come to the table, you better come correct. You're going to have to make him think seriously about it if he's going to walk away from this opportunity.
Well, I don't think he'll lack for opportunities. Again, I don't know because I haven't talked to him if he wants to spend time with family, if he wants to decompress and have a little bit of time away, or if he wants to stay in it. Whether it's a head coaching job, Spence, whether it might be a consulting job, whether you never know. There's a million different iterations of things out there. If Kyle decides he wants to do that, he'll have options for sure.
All right, moving over to what we all knew was coming, and the announcement made official over the weekend that Morgan Scally continues the trend of Sigma Chi's running Salt Lake. Most importantly, he is now the head coach of Utah football. And look, if there was a Webster's dictionary definition of Utah man, there would be a picture of Morgan. So my question, Bill, is what do you think continues as far as what's already been built, and what sort of new approach will he take to put his own stamp on Utah football?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to change the culture. And by the way, you're right. I mean, he grew up, his father played at Utah in the 60s. He was an All-American at Utah and has coached his entire career there. There is nobody better suited for the Utah job than Morgan Scally. I don't know that he's going to overhaul things much. I mean, you've got a really good culture in place that, let's be fair, Morgan's a part of. His DNA, his roots, everything are all over that program, just like Kyle Whittingham's are. So I don't know that you're going to change things a great deal, but make no mistake about it, every coach is going to come in and put their own individual touch or twist or feel on it. So, yeah, Morgan's going to do some things differently than Kyle did, but I don't think he's going to overhaul it. What he's going to do, I don't know. I don't think you're going to want to change a lot because what you've had this year is a pretty good feel for things. Now, when you run a program overall, he knows the intricacies better than anybody because he's been in there and part of it. He'll probably put his own spin on it, but I don't know that you're going to completely overhaul your staff. I don't know that you're going to completely change philosophies, but I think they'll be settled. That's why it'll be interesting when he finally – and I don't think he's going to say anything publicly until after the bowl game. That's when he's probably working on things behind the scenes. But, you're going to take over, and then you're going to be able to answer those questions. And I'm sure he'll have the answers ready because he's been the coach in waiting for a little while now. And to think that he just decided on Saturday what he's going to do is crazy and silly. He's too smart a guy. He's too sharp a guy. I'm sure he's had plans in place behind the scenes on how he wants to do things when that day came. So I'll be really anxious to hear what he says and how he articulates it when that time comes.
And to your point, I'm sure he has considered and maybe already knows who will fill the seat he leaves vacant after sliding over one seat. And I was thinking about this from the approach of how incredible the offense was this year with Jason and Devin and how all of the expectations really came true. And it was a different offense than we are accustomed to. It was a different approach than we're accustomed to. And the data and numbers just simply indicate Utah was one of the best offensive teams in the Big 12, one of the best rushing teams in the country. But it was on the defensive side that at times we were left wanting. So whoever fills that seat, because we've always been told like it is the Whittingham DNA from dad to son, and that is how Utah plays defense to Morgan. Do you think we'll see a little bit of a wrinkle, or is it just a matter of like, this is what we do here? And any thoughts on who fills that seat?
No, I think he's got some good in-house candidates. You could say somebody like a Sharif Shaw. You could say somebody like a Colton Swan, maybe even a Lewis Powell, who's played in that defense. These guys are all, two of them played in the defense. One of them has coached it now for 7 years. I think those guys are good on-staff possibilities. And maybe there's an opportunity to go outside and add a little bit of new blood. Sometimes it's not bad to have a fresh set of eyes too, Spence. Somebody with good pedigree, somebody who you think a lot alike with, but somebody that maybe brings some fresh ideas. I think all those things are possibilities. Again, I don't think this is nothing new. This is probably something Morgan's thought and put a lot of time and effort into behind the scenes, knowing that he was coach in waiting. But I think there's good options and good cases for both ways to go. So I don't have any idea, but I think you've got good on-staff possibilities. And then I think if you went outside, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either.
Does Jay Hill answer the phone? Does Jay Hill talk to Morgan about rolling back up to Salt Lake?
I think, much like you said, Michigan's got to call a guy like Kyle Whittingham. I think if Jay and Morgan have a good relationship, I think I'd make that phone call, because the one thing we do know is Jay Hill is a very good defensive football coach. He was a heck of a head coach at Weber State. And what he's done down there has been pretty impressive. And remember, Kalani was a defensive guy, and he turned that defense over. So I'm a Jay Hill fan through and through. I always have been. Back to when he and I used to have great conversations when he was, a secondary coach and special teams coordinator. So I don't think that would be a bad idea to at least make the phone call.
No, I agree. All right, moving over here, in addition to having that news break on Friday and trying to learn as much as we possibly could, if you are in the media space in our market, you've also had to try to get your MBA in finance over the course of like 4 or 5 days, as it was announced that the University of Utah has partnered with Otro Capital in the framework of a new deal that will lead to a for-profit endeavor called Utah Brands and Entertainment, LLC. There are a lot of details that we don't know, and it's been interesting to hear from people over the past 4 or 5 days since we kind of were able to unpack this and bring on some guests to teach us what this is about, as far as what the details may or may not look like, but just wanted to know your reaction and your thoughts on how this is going to play out.
Well, I was lucky enough to get to do a sit-down the other day with Mark Harlan and Taylor Randall. I sat in on the Board of Trustees meeting and then did a little sit-down interview and video that's available on the university YouTube page. And it was enlightening to me to kind of get their read on this, because this is a world that I'm not very familiar with. You're probably more familiar with it with your dad's expertise in it than I am, Spence, but it was really enlightening. And the thing I came away with was they're excited about this. It's not your traditional private equity setup like you traditionally have, where they just write you a big check. This feels more like a partnership between a company like Otro Capital and the university. But to your point, there was a lot of stuff that they weren't able to talk about with me yet, because the deal hasn't been finalized yet. Now that they've gotten approval of the Board of Trustees, now they go on to finalize that deal. And I think we'll probably get more specifics on this in January, February, when this deal is finalized. So I'm one of those people that are, work within athletics, so I'm very curious to see how this partnership kind of lays out too.
All right, before I set you loose, the latest on hoops, where we saw a big lead against Mississippi State evaporate. They did get a win against Ole Miss. They're now playing, some other P4 counterparts And we are high speed ahead to conference play, which will begin in just a matter of days now. So progress report, year one, Alex Jensen.
Offensively, they're pretty good, Spence. Defensively, they're still a little bit of a work in progress. You mentioned it. They had a 14-point lead the other night against Mississippi State that they let go down at the Delta Center and ended up losing that game. They've got one more easy – I shouldn't say easy. They've got one more, what appears to be on paper winnable non-conference game. And then they've got a game at Washington, and that's a good Washington team. And then they're into Big 12. They open Big 12 play with Arizona on January 3rd. So it ramps up pretty quickly here. Again, talking to Alex, it's just they're still trying to kind of get that philosophy and message instilled with this group and trying to figure out ways to win collectively against better teams. We're a little bit better rebounding the other night. Didn't do as good a job guarding as maybe they could have against some Mississippi State guards. So, it's weird to say 11 games in, but still a little bit of a work in progress.
Yes, sir. All right, Riles, appreciate the time, man. Have an excellent week, and obviously we'll look forward to chatting soon, okay?
Let's do it again, Spence. Thanks, man.
All right, our guy Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes, he's going to have Stuart Mandel on his podcast this week, and there's video available of Bill's sit-down with Taylor Randall and Mark Harlan. So some good insight there. We appreciate Bill's time. All right, we are about an hour and 15 minutes away from Monday Night Football between the Dolphins and the Steelers. Big one for both. Both teams actually still in the hunt. Steelers actually lead their division with a 7-6 record. So we'll bring that to you when we say goodnight at 6. We have 3 hours in the books. We have 1 hour to go on a Monday afternoon. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, here we go. Drive at 5 time. Monday afternoon, 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. Our mild December continues. We hit about 55 degrees earlier today, and the sun was shining. We're looking at about 43 degrees right now, maybe a little bit of rain later on in the week. But, yeah, very warm winter. If you're looking for Christmas with snow, this might not be the month. But happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. Took advantage of the warmth to get outside. A lot of people, of course, pining for snow, but we've been very busy today. We are about an hour and 10 minutes away, thereabouts, from Monday Night Football, where the Miami Dolphins are in Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Both these two teams are actually still in the hunt to potentially make the playoffs. The Steelers actually lead their division. Pittsburgh is a 3-point favorite tonight. Mike Tomlin is 21-3. As the head coach of the Steelers on Monday Night Football, and he's never lost in Pittsburgh. He's 11-0 at home, which is something else. Of course, we've continued today to react to the news that was broke right before we hopped on air on Friday that Coach Witt is stepping down, not retiring, but stepping down, with a number of different guests. Started things off today with Scott Mitchell, who stopped by to give his perspective. Zach Moss was excellent today, and then we were just joined by the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, as Coach Witt will coach his last game during the Vegas Bowl on New Year's Eve, and then it will be time to officially hand the reins over to Morgan Scalley. Now, a lot has been made of the language in the in the press release that did not say retirement, but said stepping down. Our friends at the Salt Lake Tribune have done an excellent job of trying to source some of this stuff. A conversation that Jason Batacchio had with Alex Whittingham up on sltrib.com and indicated that Coach Witt very much still has a lot of gas left in the tank. I mean, ultimately, that's not a surprise. I will point you to the Zach Moss interview today. I thought Zach was very honest and insightful because one of the things that has caught me off guard, right? So if you go back to Friday's show, we had Garrett Bowles on Friday. We had Sean O'Connell on Friday. We had Eric Weddle on Friday. And today, whether it's Zach Moss or Stevenson Sylvester or Scott Mitchell, everyone is surprised that Witt has stepped down. Now, I'm not saying that I was right, they were wrong or whatever. I would trust them before you trust me. I'm surprised that everybody close to the program seems to be surprised, if that makes sense. Because I felt like there were signs, right? We've talked about the Kansas State win here in Salt Lake on senior night where Witt was emotional upon saying the sentence, their last time at Rice-Eccles. It's the one thing that kind of went unnoticed. Everybody was like, hey, Kyle was emotional talking about his seniors. No, he wasn't. And even though he said I get emotional talking about my seniors, no, he doesn't. Like, I've been covering this for 20 years. And he didn't get emotional when talking about his players. What led him to emotion was when he said the sentence, final time at Rice-Eccles. So that was, for me, kind of the eye-opening moment. Then after the Kansas win, he admitted that he was very close to retiring a year ago. So I thought all the signs were there, right? And so the week after the regular season ended, I actually said on Monday, for the first time since this became a story, and I'll call it 4 years, thereabouts. For about 4 years, people have been trying to surmise what's next. As a result of what Kyle himself has always said, did not want to be like his father, who died young, unfortunately, and was a coaching lifer and essentially gave his life to the sport. Kyle wanted to be a more balanced person and has been. As a husband, as a father, as a grandfather, as somebody with other interests outside of football, clearly when it comes to golf and tennis and skiing and just simply exercising, taking care of himself. I think he's achieved that. But as a result of him always saying that, I think a lot of people surmised this ride could end about 3-4 years ago. I never knew, and I never covered it day to day in a way that others did just for content. And I was never confident in saying, like even last year, when a lot of people thought, okay, the sport has changed. Utah has struggled for a couple of years, most of it due to injury. This will be the year where he steps down. I did not feel confident saying that a year ago. And all year, I haven't felt confident until the week after the regular season. Other people have surmised that this was it, but I was never in that space. And then after the regular season was over, I kind of felt like we were headed in this direction. And of course, over the weekend, it became official to nobody's surprise that the contingency plan that has been in place has been executed. And after the Vegas Bowl, this program will belong to Morgan Scalley. All right, we'll catch a break. We're going to bring in Sly. Stevenson Sylvester live in the studio. We'll say goodnight for Monday Night Football between the Steelers and the Dolphins. So keep it here on ESPN 700. Pittsburgh Steelers are a 3-point favorite tonight against the Miami Dolphins. It's actually a big game. Two teams that continue to be in the mix for a playoff spot. Steelers lead their division, so we'll see if they can get it done tonight. A little Monday Night Football. Can I get 42 fantasy points from Aaron Rodgers tonight?
Ooh,
the answer is no.
No.
The answer is no.
No, that's a lot.
So I got to admit, I'm a little bit depressed, and usually my depression settles in like mid-January, late January, early February.
Mm-hmm.
Because the rhythm of winter kind of goes like this. Sets in, you're like, bummer, it's going to be cold for a while. Holidays get you through December, and then New Year's comes, and it's January, and you're like, we've got like 3 more months of this.
Yeah.
And it's been warm, I'm not complaining. But usually what can get me through is I have a relatively successful track record as a fantasy football player, but I'm in 3 leagues, as we talked about. Friend League, 25 years, can't quit you. RSL League, 20 years, can't quit you.
Mm-hmm.
And my little nephews, as we talked about, started a league like, will you play? Of course, I'm going to say yes. Playoffs, all 3 leagues. First round, L, all 3 leagues. I'm done unless Aaron Rodgers has a career night tonight, which he will not.
Yeah, that's a bummer. But yeah, you can't win them all, Spence. You know, this football thing's cyclical. So you go through some wins, and every once in a while, you get a valley. You'll be back on top.
This is true. What is, we've talked today, Scott Mitchell, Stevenson Sylvester, Zach Moss, Bill Riley. Now it's time for Porter Larson. Are you more or less convinced that Witt is actually retiring today than you were on Friday?
Less?
Yeah.
I think that's because we haven't heard anything, right? Outside of the fact that Michigan has probably made that call, there's at least a discussion there, right? So I'm less convinced. I think that the way that Utah and Kyle kind of left it was intentional, even if just for the opportunity for Kyle to go say, hey, what would Michigan do? Mm-hmm. What would USC do if Lincoln goes to Michigan? If Sean McVay retires really young, like he's always said he was going to do, silly thinking that. But I'm just talking about these jobs because they are the ones that I've, kind of gathered Kyle would be interested in. None other than really those football jobs. What I think Kyle would take. Obviously, the NFL you could expand a little bit, but it's Michigan, it's USC, it's the biggest jobs in college football. And then it's the pro side, and I think Southern California might have a little angle there as well. But ultimately, I'm just not sure he's entirely done. And, that advisor role through 2027 and further is something that I thought we would have maybe heard mentioned in one of the pressers or in his statement. Nothing about that. I don't want to read between the lines too much, but I also would not be terribly surprised if Kyle entertained another football opportunity. I don't know. Not speaking for the guy, but I just wouldn't be entirely surprised.
And good on him if he does. I mean, look, I don't report on rumors. I can tell you I've heard, though, from, a handful of people that it's no surprise to them that he decided instead of doing the special advisor thing for 5 years, he wanted to only do it for 2. For a number of different reasons, right? So, again, I've said it, like, he's not asking me. We exchanged texts over the weekend, but it was a respectful, like, what an unbelievable run. If you're involved in the ecosystem of Utah football, you owe that man a tremendous thank you, so it's the least I could do. But if I was like Kyle's friend, I said, wait, you can make $3.6 million for the next 2 years by just kind of hanging around? Go do that and then figure out what's next. I mean, that seems like a pretty good gig.
Yeah. And to be around football, to have still your involvement in a program you've been around for a long time, but not necessarily have the pressures of a head coach. Yeah. Kind of a no-brainer.
Yep, no doubt. So only time will tell as far as what goes down in the next chapter of Coach Witt, but we know that he'll coach the Vegas Bowl, and then he will hand the reins over to Morgan Scalley. All right, Monday Night Football coming up after a quick break. Porter, what comes our way on a Tuesday show?
On a Tuesday edition of The Drive, we'll chat with our friend Amy Donaldson, voice of reason. Gordon Monson stops by of the Salt Lake Tribune, as does one Dave Fox, and potentially Andy Larson. We'll see if he's able to stop by as well.
All right, there you go. Of course, we'll continue to talk about really one of the biggest pieces of news that has dropped in the sports realm and this community for a long, long time, the legacy of Coach Witt. What's next with Morgan Scalley? We'll do some NFL reaction to Monday Night Football. Jazz welcome in the Mavs tonight. Cooper Flagg in town, so it should be a fun night at the Delta Center, which is the name of the building. It is the Delta Center. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you to Scott Mitchell, Stevenson, Sylvester, Zach Moss, and Bill Riley. If you missed any of the sound from the show today, you go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page, become a supporter, follow along, subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars you can because it helps us out if you would do that. He's Porter, I'm Spence, saying goodnight. Steelers Dolphins coming up on the other side of a quick break right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.